Wait, come here. Oh, shall You might get two plays. No. Well, Chris is calling one of the things. Right. No, Nancy. Yeah, I know, that might jinx her. That might jinx her. Right, yeah. There's a leaf that fell on the table. We can give her the leaf. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming. We have a good crowd. We have a lot going on tonight. So I'll call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're waiting on Jared. Hopefully will be here. And I know Lori is out of town tonight, so she will not be. So we're going to start right off with some recognitions, some very well-deserved recognitions. I'll turn over to Paul and then to the school.
Yes, and I know most people are here for our budget kickoff. However, it's our tradition to start off with some staff and student recognition. And we are recognizing two outstanding high school students tonight who have really made a difference in the community and outside of the community. We're going to start with Evan Selger, who was responsible for a cleanup of Poquetapog Creek, which ultimately impacts Poquetapog Lake, or Lake Poquetapog. Evan, come right down here, please, so we can capture you. Okay, I think the camera can see you now. Don't be so far back. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Werner, high school principal, who's going to introduce our audience tonight to Evan. And maybe Evan, while he's coming down, tell us about the project.
Well, so basically it was a river cleanup of Poquetapog Creek. So it was the end of September, and we had a bunch of volunteers. Actually, more than 30 people showed up from Interact, the Environment Club, and the community in general. All showed up, which was an awesome turnout, and we cleaned up more than 4,000 pounds of trash from the river. So we got it was a good day's work.
Excellent. Wow. Congratulations, and thank you for the effort. Maybe I stole everything that Mr. Werner.
No, the work that Evan's done and is spearheaded is really part and parcel of what we value at East Hampton High School. It talks about some perseverance, collaborating with others, and putting into really active learning his desire to see the lake and the creek, cleaned up and used for future generations. So I just, want to say thank you to Evan and applaud him for all of his hard work.
What happened with all the garbage?
Oh, so actually, Belltown Recycling donated a roll-off for us to put all the trash in. So everything that we were able to collect, we hauled it all together and threw it in the dumpster, and Belltown shipped it off. And I don't know exactly what they're doing with it, but they're making sure it gets to where it's supposed to be.
Somewhere besides the creek there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Burn it and distribute it. That's great. Yes.
Great job.
What do you do with it?
Pictures, you want pictures, anybody?
That's amazing.
You can introduce.
Yes, parents, come right down.
Oh,
And,
yeah. My parents, my mom, dad.
oh, yeah, come down.
Can you just take a step that direction?
Oh, get on your, we have to get on your.
Beautiful.
Thank you. All right. One, another one. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Evan, congratulations. And if you watched the news tonight before you came here, our next student has already been featured on NBC 30 tonight. I think WFSB in the last couple of weeks. Hartford Current, all over the website, all over the internet, and deservedly so. So, Mr. Werner, if you would introduce Riley Howard. Riley, come down, please.
Riley is a very humble young man. He's a sophomore in our school, and through some online video gaming that Riley does as one of his hobbies, he came to find out a young man that was in distress. And he did the right thing, something I'd like to think all of our students would do, in that he tried to talk to this young man and then talk to his parents, say, hey, something's not sitting right here, and they were able to track this person down. They're down in Florida, and they were concerned this person was going to harm themselves, and through Riley's thinking and perseverance and really compassion that we would like to see again in all of our students, they were able to get this young man some assistance and avoid a really difficult situation. So just a great job and something I'm really proud of Riley for doing. So thank you, Riley.
We have Representative Irene Haynes, our state representative, and she has a citation for you that she'd like to read.
So the state
Parents, welcome to come down right in here and take pictures.
The State of Connecticut General Assembly official citation introduced by Irene Haynes, 34th District State Representative and Senator Norm Nadelman of the 33rd District, is hereby known to all that the Connecticut General Assembly hereby offers its sincerest congratulations to Riley Howard in recognition for the outstanding empathy and compassion you displayed in your decision to have a deep, heart-to-heart conversation with a fellow video gamer. Your patience, composure, and kindness in that very moment kept him from harming himself and to get to seek help. It's hard to read Old English. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, from the whole entire General Assembly, for your life-saving efforts. The entire membership extends its very best wishes on this memorable occasion and expresses the hope of continued success for you. Given this day, on the 28th day of October 2019, here instead of the state capitol, and with President Pro Tem Martin Looney and the Speaker of the House and the Secretary of State, Denise Merrill.
High school values was that.
Absolutely.
Okay, a couple more. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Smith. Okay.
And then we'll add another from this.
Oh.
And Irene, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to
All right,
join us.
we'll do one
tonight.
more with Mr. Goffman. Right. Thank you.
And we're also grateful that the news picked up on a nice story. So catch NBC 30 if you haven't. You should go to the website, I'm sure, and see tonight's story.
Good job.
It was on right at 6:15, right as I was walking out of the door.
Thank you.
Thanks, Irene.
And at this point, because we have elections next Tuesday, Tuesday the 5th, please don't forget to vote in our local elections next Tuesday. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the middle school. We are saying bye to 3 board members. We're not going to recognize Nancy tonight because she's a candidate for re-election.
Because she will be here.
And so we don't want to jinx her and say goodbye. We can do that later, only if necessary, but there are 3 board members who are not running again. Joanne Barmacy, Jared Bushy, and Lois Villa. They are here tonight, and Chris is going to just spoof. No.
No.
Just give the highlights of each of their terms.
Yeah, we could do a roast for some of you guys. Yeah. No. Real quick, Lois, your bluntness and your willingness to speak your mind and speak up is greatly appreciated. And also, I know when to look at you when it's time to keep things moving. Yes, I get the hint well from you. So someone else is going to have to take your space there. Yeah, no, but thank you for the last few years. It's been great, and we've done a lot between project graduation, never mind policy, and everything we've done here. So
Thank you.
It's
been a pleasure, thank you.
Thank you. Jared. I'm glad we got to text you and make sure you were going to be here tonight. But you've had a busy 4 years between your own family growing and then you're taking on your role at the Masons. Again, you're just not giving up on volunteering and helping out, but you were constant, steady voice, rational, always gave options and look at things in a different way. So I appreciate that, and thank you and best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Then there's Joanne.
12
How long?
years.
12 long years. Yeah, so you've seen it all. You have the history, the knowledge, the time that you've devoted to not just this board, but CAVE and Learn, and the conventions and everything you have represented East Hampton with in those past 12 years. It's going to be missed, and it's going to be hard to find people to fill those things that you did for us. So,
I hope they are filled.
me too.
Hope those shoes
yes.
are filled.
Yeah. So best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Mm,
And really serving with all of you, it's been a pleasure. We got a great board
yes.
and a great superintendent and staff and all of you guys too. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
We do have a little token of our appreciation, and we'd love to take a picture of our outgoing board members. Right by the bell.
Yeah, no slow.
Why don't we just have them hold the bag instead of hold the picture? As I make sure on the way out tonight, you take one of the plants.
You stand in the middle, stand in the middle.
No, that's gonna save the most stuff that way.
No, just that. Just that.
See it look great under the bell?
There, good.
Very easy.
Are you smiling because it's your last meeting?
All right, 1, 2, 3.
It does work out, we'll Photoshop.
I'll do one more time. One more, last one. Thank you.
All I can think
Thank you very much. And we will remind you to take the plants at the end of the meeting.
Yes. If not, I'm claiming one. All right. And here we are already. Budget time.
Getting out just in time.
I know, yeah, I was just gonna say, you three are leaving at the worst time, yeah. You know, we have, our next meeting will be November 11th, week after the election.
Actually, we're holding it on the 12th.
12th, that's
because of
right.
the Monday holiday.
Yeah, the holiday. So, it's always surprising to me that we start this process so early, but with knowing all we have to do and all the departments, I think it gives us a lot of time and needed time to do it. Something I want to do, we're going to open it up. Anybody that's here, staff, students, parents, anyone, to talk about budget requests and programming and what you would like to see. I printed out something that I wrote on social media Friday night, and it just, I think, kind of sets the tone of who we as a board are and what we expect. So if you could just indulge me for 1 second. I've been on the Board of Education for the last 6 years. In that time, we have become a board that is not political. The role of the Board of Ed is to set policy, establish a budget, and hire a superintendent. I can proudly say that we are a board that communicates, listens to each other, and respects each other's thoughts and ideas, and those that speak at any of our meetings. We are all here for the same reason, to provide our students with the best education possible. The majority of votes taken by the Board of Education are unanimous. This is because we base our votes on facts presented to us by our very knowledgeable and experienced staff, not politics. We're here for the students, and again, not politics. I am proud of our Board of Education and all our employees. And I, as always, encourage anyone to come to a meeting, write a letter, speak up, and be involved and be part of the process. So, with that, we will open it up to anybody. Paul is here to take notes. The process, as we've done in the past, is as someone has an idea, Paul can go through in the next, what are we giving you, a day?
By tomorrow afternoon, we will publish the entire list with what we anticipate the cost to be. So you don't have to stand up and say what you think this will cost. All you have to do is present your idea for new programs, new equipment, new supplies, a new teacher. Everything will be listed, and we'll put a price tag to it. We'll get that list out to people. We'll allow for further comments. And then obviously during the month of end of November, December, we start looking at what we can really afford to put in. We'll put it in different tiers of definitely in the budget, or possibly in the budget, or unfortunately not being considered for next year.
Do we take also last year's red, yellow, green and kind of work off of that too?
If there are repeats, yes.
Just kind of
Yep.
strike out or continue?
Yep.
Wish or need.
So we're open. If you could, again, feel free to speak. You don't have to come down here. Just stand where you are and just give us your name, and let's hear your ideas.
Do you want us to come up there?
No, you can stay where you are. Just kind of speak loud enough so everyone can hear.
All right, I'm Jessica Stewart. I have 2 children in the school system. They're in 6th and 8th grade, so they're both in middle school. I got the shortened version of the State of the Schools from Mr. Smith last week, so I loved everything that he had in there. Mine is a little more trivial. My daughter has discovered cheerleading at middle school. She discovered it last year and loves it a lot. She then joined the town cheerleading, and I've really seen her grow, and their coaches really talk about how these girls have really built really strong relationships with each other, and that she's amazed at how kind they are, and they have each other to take care of, just to sort of fall back on. And I would like to see some more money put into our middle school cheer. They have 30 girls signed up so far this year, and they have 1 coach. They really do need an assistant coach to help them. I mean, we only have 30 signed up. Last year we had almost 40 girls. And they all, it was amazing. They all went to competition. It just was really some nice camaraderie and really strong relationships that they built. So I'd like to see a little bit more. It's not a lot. I've been told it's $2,500 for an assistant coach. So if we could see that next year. And then I noticed that this year they're putting like a gaming sort of thing at the middle school after school, but I would love to see some more extracurricular activities right after school that might not be sports related for those kids that aren't into sports. Like I love the games, the tabletop games, anything after school that these kids can sort of find a place to hang out. It's the hardest age group for them, I think, and we really need some way to make friends and really build some relationships.
Thank you. Yes?
I'm asking for a 3rd cross-country coach to be put on the table. This past season, we had 97 students signed up. And with originally 2 coaches, we did in the last hour magically have somebody able to give us a 3rd coach, because we would have to have needed to cut half of that number. We did end up, once the kids realized what cross country is and how many miles you do run, a few of them did drop, so that's okay, that's part of the process.
Yeah.
But I still had on a good day over 80. We have the strongest showing in our league, and it's really awesome to come off 2 buses with a sea of blue. It's nice and intimidating to the other teams, but just to have the 3 coaches knowing that we could allow the 97. Hopefully we break 100. That'd be awesome if we did it next season. And just to keep everybody together, to start bonding, especially awesome with the 6th graders. They're meeting their 7th and 8th graders. They're meeting other kids that are in their grade that they haven't, maybe seen. And just developing their relationships, learning how to time manage between sports and other academics and their with their academics. It just goes a really long way. We were blessed this year, like I said, to have that 3rd coach, and I'd like to see it continue. And hopefully our numbers will continue to be as high as they are. So 97 was awesome to see, but also panicky with just 2 coaches.
Yeah.
1 year I did end up going to the hospital with an athlete. I would hate to have 90-something kids with 1 coach. I think that's just unsafe for everybody involved. So I think for the safety of the students, the runners, the athletes, with our numbers being that high, we have to really make sure that we have adequate supervision for them.
Just so the board knows, we've tried to make cheerleading and cross-country at the middle school non-cut activities. So right now, those are the two, what we consider sports that there are no cuts in. Without the funding this year for cheerleading, it's possible we'll need to make cuts there. And as well, for cross-country, congratulations to our middle school boys, first in their conference, and girls were second place. And then at the high school, our boys were class SS champions and state champions, and the girls were second place in class S state championship. So our cross-country program is certainly delivering.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great sport.
Next, oh, we have two here.
Okay, I'm a lot older. A lot. My colleague and I, Parker Strong, who apologizes for not being here tonight. He had ankle surgery Friday. We are requesting a full-time health teacher. 2 years ago, we lost that person, Kevin, that was at the high school, and Mr. Strong and I ended up having to pick up the health classes. In turn, PE program went from 26 sections down to 15. So our PE program has been cut in half, basically. So not only has it impacted our PE program, but it also has impacted our PE electives that we've offered, which was fitness for life, mind and body connection, and team sports. That's been cut. So it's really impacted 3 sections. It's also impacted health. Not only talking about those programs in those areas, but also the supervision of the locker room. Because if one of us is teaching health and one of us is in PE, we can't be in 2 places at once. So we are asking, we are pleading for a full-time health teacher, which would then allow us to go full-time back into our gym where we do our best work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just a note on that, you had a part-time health teacher that was one of the casualties of the budget 2 years ago. And it truly has impacted because our new graduation requirements and the new state health requirements for students graduating in the class of 2023 has impacted what 2 teachers can do. It would have certainly impacted the 2.6 teachers, but now it's certainly impacting the 2 full-time teachers that we have.
Hi, my name is Casey Carta. I am the Family and Consumer Sciences teacher here at the high school. For those of you who don't know what Family and Consumer Sciences is, it's the new home ec. So I took over the program 3 years ago, and we made a lot of changes, which was really nice. Some of those changes included a UConn level course, and just this year we started to partner with Middlesex Community College, and the independent preschool that we run is also worth college credit for our students. So as those human development programs are growing, our culinary is also growing, but unfortunately we don't have the staffing to accommodate all of our students. So in the spring of last year, my vice principal, Matt Warner, came into my classroom and handed me a sheet and said, "This is going to be a scheduling nightmare." And I looked, and 181 students signed up for my Culinary 1 course. I can have 20 students in a class due to safety purposes, and I can only teach 2 sections, which means 40 students get into those courses, which displaces 141 kids. In addition, we offer a Culinary 2 course that 73 students signed up for. In the spring, I'll be offering an additional 2 sections of that. So that displaces another 33 students, which means 174 students didn't get into culinary courses this year that they were looking forward to. So my thought with our program is that as human development is growing and becoming rigorous for students who are serious about education and becoming teachers, they're earning college credit for that. However, not all students are looking to go to college. Some students are looking to go right into the workforce, and culinary arts is a really great avenue for them. If we were to be able to expand the program, we would be able to get a full-time teacher. And, you know, I did it out. If we hired one full-time culinary arts teacher, they would only cover the culinary 1 courses with 1 semester class left over. So my ask is for a culinary arts teacher to accommodate all of our students as they look forward to their future and what they're going to be doing after high school.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi, my name is Lynn Ward, and I work at the middle school in SRBI reading. And what I'm advocating for is Chromebooks for the 6th grade. I know it's been in and out of the budget, but it's really, really important. The 7th and 8th grade have Chromebooks, and the 6th grade without Chromebooks is just so difficult. With testing, with their classes, just with everything. Another thing I'm advocating for is what Joanna said and what the cheerleading person over there said, because I have seen the cheerleaders and they need an assistant coach, because there's just too many girls for one person, and that cheerleading coach does a lot of work. I do van duty in the commons when she's doing it, and she really needs a second person, and she tries so hard. And Joanna needs it for safety reasons, and safety is so important when it comes to things like this. So that's my thing.
Thank you. Next. Yes, sir.
I have a letter on behalf of our library media specialists, and they asked me to read it for them.
Go ahead.
We are ready to advocate for the reintroduction of a full-time certified library media specialist at East Hampton Middle School. The role of library media specialist is varied and frequently not understood. We do far more than check out and reshelve books. At Memorial Center and East Hampton High School, we teach classes every day. We collaborate with fellow teachers to integrate technology and improve instruction. We plan lessons, design and grade assessments, and attend department meetings and PLCs where, because we're involved in instruction across grades and disciplines, we're able to contribute valuable insights and help streamline instruction, introduction of new universal skills such as critical evaluations of sources. We curate a collection of databases and Web 2.0 resources and help both teachers and students access them. We collaborate with the local public library to put word copies of award-winning books in our students' hands. Through book talks and read-alouds, we get to know our students as readers and thoughtfully build our library books collections to support their interests and needs. Additionally, we work with students one-on-one and in small groups outside of class time. We run book clubs and maker spaces, promote library activities on social media, present at state and regional conferences, and facilitate professional development among our colleagues. In schools without a certified teacher in this role, these things simply do not happen. In closing, research consistently links library media specialists with higher student test scores and reading levels. In fact, studies conducted across dozens of states came to this universal conclusions that schools will, with a well-equipped library staffed by a full-time certified librarian and appropriate support staff, will contribute significant gains in student learning. High-quality school librarians not only help our students read more, but also help them learn how to use and process information better and to better perform on achievement tests. Thank you for your time and efforts, Katie, TJ, Rebecca.
Thank you. Next. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jim Radovich. I'm running for a Republican position here on the Board of Education. I want to tout the high school clubs that I want to give again a push to for Mrs. Dean and what she did to influence my son Kevin with a career in the financial services and economics. My son's a senior at the Nichols College, which is a business and finance school in Dudley, Mass. And I think that Mrs. Dean was very influential, along with my wife and I, in getting him on a path to financial services and life insurance sales. He has a job lined up after graduation next summer. He's had 4 internships with New York Life so far. And I think bringing someone in from a different perspective, the business world, can really influence a number of people, number of students, to really into a career path that I think would be beneficial to them. And as long as he does well, he's got a job lined up for himself, and we're very proud of Mrs. Dean and my wife and I, what she did to influence him. I would love to see more outsiders or teachers who maybe specialize in a certain area of the business world, just to come in and talk to the kids and maybe provide an influence to them. So if there's anything that can be done with after-school clubs, that'd be a great opportunity, I think, for kids to learn and get an idea of what's out there in the business world. And as an honorable mention, my daughter didn't participate in any, my daughter Renee didn't participate in any clubs, but my father, who died 6 or 7 years ago, he was a combat veteran during World War II, and my daughter interviewed him for a 7th grade project about his World War II experience, and she was so in love with history and the historical perspective of World War II and what my dad shared with her back in 7th grade, that she became a love for history, a patriot herself, just like my father was a patriot. And she's an intern right now with the Department of Homeland Security in Boston, and she's in line for an Asian position after graduation with the Department of Homeland Security. And again, an outside influence being brought into her life to put her on a career path. And whether it's clubs or individuals, I think that's a great thing for students to get involved with people outside of the school who can maybe influence them themselves to a lucrative career path.
Nice. Manufacturer pipeline, good now? We're sorry, just having a little side note here. It made me think of something. How long ago was that? Maybe 6, 8 months ago. I was at a conference down at General Dynamics, and there was this senator there talking, and I literally followed her out of the room and met her out in the hallway. And they're part of the manufacturing pipeline that is being run in southeastern part of the state, and it hasn't reached over to the border yet. So I got contact information and who is running it, and I gave it a call, and we made contact. So let them know what's running. Just give an update.
Mr. Warner is in charge of that project, and we're kind of in a situation where the manufacturing pipeline for Southeast Connecticut goes all the way to Marlboro, and East Hampton is not eligible. So we're hoping that something is going to start in this particular area. We have some contacts, we have some businesses that are very supportive of the program, and we're just waiting for the possible connections. Matt, I don't know if you have any update for the board.
Yes, I've been in contact with Amanda Nagel, who she came in last year and spoke to a number of students in particular about the Eastern Pipeline, and we're going to get together with a few other people who are looking to try to create one for our region, just kind of discuss options, or at least to this point maybe career fairs that our students could attend, if not necessarily a program that's most closely associated with that. I don't know, Mrs. Richard is here, I don't want to steal her thunder, but she and I have been talking about where the tech ed program might go here at the high school lab, going into engineering and manufacturing. So she's someone who I want to kind of bring into this, because there's a few programs out there that we can connect with that really develops in those areas and provides alternate routes to careers and pathways aside from traditional things that we're doing here. So yes, we're in communication with.
Good.
It's great for the high school, but it also needs to come down to Jay's level, the 8th graders, as they're preparing and thinking about high school. So those ideas of, I don't know if I'm college ready when they're thinking in 8th grade, that needs to be at least brought to their attention, that here's another path for you.
Well, the middle school has a connection with WEPCO, and they've already been, in fact, one of the parents contacted me and said her son was absolutely enthralled with the experience of getting to go to the plastics manufacturer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like Goodwin College has a manufacturing high school now, you know, because the demand is so great.
So we're working.
You know, so, yeah.
Okay, so back to budget. Sorry, a little side note there, but it was a good time to bring that up. Anyone else? Yes.
I'm reading a letter on behalf of Sherry Bannock, who was not able to attend tonight. She just said that she would like to advocate for high school students who desperately need the reinstatement of another math teacher. As everybody knows, due to the budget cut 2 years ago, the math department suffered the reduction of a teacher, going from 6 to 5 full-time teachers. The math department is the only core subject that is still operating with this deficit. Do Due to that reduction, we now have many core courses such as Algebra 2 and Geometry, class sizes in the upper 20s. With next year's freshman class predicted to be one of the largest yet, and the math requirement for graduation increasing from 3 to 4. It is predicted to be, that is why we need to have a reinstatement of the math department, and it cannot be ignored. We must keep the needs of the best interests of our students in mind. In a world where science, technology, engineering, and math are the pillars of our future, if we want our students and our children to have the best possible chance of being successful, getting into college of their choice, and being able to think and problem solve in any situations, then we need to fund the reinstatement of a high school math teacher for this position.
Thank you. Yes?
I'm Stones. I just wanted to piggyback off of what was just mentioned. With the large student population coming up from the middle school to the high school, we have huge grades. And with the significant cuts that were made in the last couple of years, we're down approximately 8 teachers since 14, excuse me. I'd love to get the recommendations from the superintendent and the teachers as far as what position needs to be reinstated in order to keep reasonable class sizes for our students to be engaged. So that is where, so that's a specific ask, but it just depends on what the teachers and what the superintendent feel is best at. But I do know, based on the past couple of years of cuts in the school, middle school are hard hit, including the language teacher.
Yeah. World language teacher. Okay. Next. Yes, sir.
I'm Neil Zielinski. I'm president of the Hampton Education Association. I also teach middle school, so I'm sort of speaking for all the schools as well. A lot of staff members are going to be handing their principals stipend request forms, so you'll be seeing a lot of possible programs, like a lot of people have been talking about, how to have students be a part of the school community after school, before school, and there are a lot of things happening, but some of them need to be recognized through stipend positions that are in our contract as well. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be waiting for that. Next.
I'm going to talk as mom.
Okay.
Mom. Just, kind of piggybacking with the high school, just looking at the electives that they offer, we've lost a lot the last few years because of the teacher, losing some of our teachers we lost electives. So unfortunately, my daughter she received some bad news over the summer because she had to pick between a Spanish class and taking chorus. So because of the leveling that she was recommended in for Spanish, she went with that, but that meant she had to now give up chorus. She's been part of chorus the first 2 years, and now as a junior. Kind of stinks that an upperclassman has to now say no to chorus. She's unable to participate in any of the concerts, go on any of the events. We're trying to build our students to be well-rounded individuals, and I know the arts has a big play in it, and that was her form of art, was in music and her love of music. So it was kind of sad this summer when she had to make the decision as to what she wanted. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen in the future for her or for any other student, that we could look at increasing some of our electives. And I know our states keeps adding, the requirements for graduation. So we have to just make sure we're offering enough for them so that they can have variety and diversify themselves in different areas and not just focus on one, per se, platform of electives. So we, just to also make them competitive for college, we want them to be well-rounded. So, I wish she was able to sing. I wish she was able to show off that other talent that she has, but unfortunately this year we have to put it on hold, and hopefully we get an opportunity next year.
Okay. Next. Hearing none? Oh, no, we got a couple of them. Okay. Yep.
I know I mentioned some programming that we're putting up in the years. We've had specialized programming with ABA and STARS, which has resulted in a cost avoidance for health assessments. And as our students are getting older, we need to look at having special ed teachers for our ABA programming at the center school and middle school, so we can continue to program for students in district. And also the STARS therapeutic program at the high school, as those students are moving up, so we can continue that cost avoidance at the high
Arlene Cook. I wear many hats. I work here at the high school. I'm a parent of a high school student, and I'm also co-chair of the East Hampton Prevention Partnership, the Substance Abuse Prevention Group. And I'd just like to reiterate what a lot of people already said here. I think funding of after-school activities is important from a substance abuse prevention perspective. It builds assets and personal growth and confidence, and all of that helps steer kids away from abusing substances. I also, from that angle, would like to advocate for a full-time health teacher, because a lot of those subjects need to be handled in a more consistent and repetitive way. The kids need to hear it more than once, and I'm hoping that maybe the health program can be expanded at the high school to include more than just freshman health. I think kids need to hear this, and especially as new substances and dangers become available every year. You know, after one's freshman year, how do we continue to keep that conversation open and going all through high school? I also want to advocate for a foreign language teacher. I know a couple of years ago we lost a foreign language teacher. I think actually we lost a part-time teacher here at the high school and part-time teacher at the middle school, but that really impacted both buildings, I think the middle school a lot more. I just can't fathom a world where we don't try to educate kids in languages as early as possible. I think East Hampton really has taken a step back by not offering it in the 6th grade. My daughter and I are doing college visits, and some schools have a foreign language requirement. You know, it helps if kids have done it for longer. It helps them maybe test out of 1 year. So that's even a cost saving later on in, you know, in college. On the other hand, is if you're not on the college route, a lot of times you might be working with foreign language speakers. All that comes together. So I really advocate for that. And then last but not least, I would like to see the district make a commitment to fund 2 grades worth of Chromebooks every year, the 6th grade and the freshmen at the high school. If we don't fund both of that, then we're always playing catch up. It's got to be a consistent commitment. We can't fund it one year and decide not to fund it the next year. It really stunts the programs that can't rely on planning, curriculum, and things like that if they don't have the tools to implement the curriculum with. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Andy Gonzalez, building principal at Memorial. I'd like to advocate for 5 things for our building. I'd like to see the extension of the Foundations program for our 2nd and 3rd graders. Currently, we offer this multi-sensory systematic approach for our kindergarten and 1st graders. It's really been exciting for me to watch the instruction live and see the students transfer the skills. So I'd love to see that extended to 2nd and 3rd grade. As many of you heard in the State of the Schools presentation, I think a STEM teacher and a lab at Memorial School is really necessary to provide the best possible next generation science standards, hands-on experience, robotic and coding. I'd also like to advocate for iReady instructional seats for all of our learners to bolster our focused academic support time. And the last 2 kind of go hand in hand, a kindergarten teacher and another special education teacher. I'd like to decrease the class size with our youngest learners. Currently, they're going from preschool with a teacher and some support in smaller class sizes. Our kindergarten classes are 20 or above. I'd really like to get that number down.
Chris Sullivan, building principal at Center Elementary. Continuing that theme, I'd like to first advocate for an additional classroom teacher. In 2016 and 17, Center School had 7th and 4th grade and 7th and 5th grade sections. That has been reduced by 2 teachers, which may not seem like a lot, but it is 14% of our classroom teachers in 4th and 5th grade. We have class sizes in 4th grade of 26 students. It's not an average across, that's each fourth grade classroom has 26 students, and that will continue to be the average with 6 sections in 5th grade, if that continues. Special education teacher is instrumental in closing the achievement gap for our learners. Our needs continue to grow, and our students deserve a level of staffing that best meets the needs of those learners. Social emotional support staff and a school counselor. We know that basic psychological needs must be met before a child can begin to access their true potential. As a school, we're doing our best to keep up with addressing the growing demand for social and emotional support. We need staff that can intervene early and equip our students with necessary and appropriate social and emotional support while also building our trauma-informed practices. And continuing from the middle school down to center school, 3 through 5 world language teacher that I've advocated for in the last 2 budget cycles. For mastery of a language and the appropriate introduction of advanced placement language opportunities in the high school, students need earlier exposure to world language opportunities. And last, continued funding of our STEM lab. We're just beginning to scratch the surface with some grant opportunities, but we've seen just an explosion in terms of divergent thinking, the creative thinking that our students have exhibited in that environment, and I would love to continue to grow that practice.
Well, Emma, remember, anything you guys being here at the high school? Not yet? Okay. Yes?
Jason Lehman, building principal of East Hampton Middle School. I'd like to first start out by just saying thank you to my EHS colleagues and parents for coming out tonight, really feeling the love. Middle school, in looking at planning for 2030, I realized that we only have about 3,961 days left until September 1st, 2030. So my list is a little extensive, but Mr. Smith, don't worry, I've written it down for you. Starting with certified, non-certified staff, world language position is absolutely essential. As I mentioned at the State of the Schools report, we have collectively about 2.4 million minutes of study hall this year. It just seems like something that we could really look at using that time wiser. I also like to advocate for the potential of a new team of teachers to be at the middle school that would have a thematic build to them. That would, in a couple ways, it would help us to reduce our classroom sizes, but it would also bring back potentially some of our magnet school students back into our school community. I'd like to also look to take our SRBI program to the next level by moving from our one full-time and 1 part-time staff member in math and in reading and move it to 2 full-time people to provide more students remedial services. As advocated before, a full-time library media specialist for much the same reasons that I read earlier. The assistant cheerleading coach, I think, is absolutely essential for us to continue to build that program. An assistant cross-country coach, third one, to continue to sustain that program's success, and also a special education teacher for much the reasons Mr. Mosher pointed out. I also look to increase some of our elective opportunities. Right now, we only have a rotation of 4, they call them specialists. And although they do a fabulous job with what they're given, I'd like to also include some classes such as personal finance, botany, introduction to engineering. So Joanna, thank you for that segue earlier. This would be where we would provide those opportunities for students to really get some exposure and look at diving into that pipeline. And also a survival skills, as I think Mr. Smith pointed out in the State of the Schools presentation. Some of these are your soft skills that people may be more familiar with, but it's also things like public speaking. Clubs, as Mr. Shalansky mentioned, we're looking at a number of clubs. We have a lot of great teachers that are eager to get in there and to support our students outside of the school day as well. One right now that's kind of being piloted, board games club, science club or environmental club, math club. We're looking to also offer a fitness club, photo club, poetry club, golf club. Unified sports and intramurals are all things we'd like to make sure are on the table for next year's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade class. Some of the supplies we'd be looking to allocate as we talked about moving into 2030. Virtual reality, some glasses kits. These are inexpensive ways to be found as we're starting to do some research. to really bring kids on virtual field trips. So in place of the cost of the transportation, the cost of the insurance, you're providing them an in-class, in-the-moment opportunity to experience the world. Robotics, as well as engineering, is also something we're looking to continue to bolster and support with our student population. So robotics kits for our applied math and sciences in our engineering classes would make a lot of sense. And lastly, something that I've asked for last year and I'd like to continue to ask for is flexible furniture options for our students. Right now, the furniture that we have is pretty antiquated and very bulky. And when you have two of the biggest grades in the school, in your school, it's very difficult to even just navigate the classrooms. Some of the furniture that we were able to obtain from other schools that are going through renovations is not new. It was free, other than Mr. Harwood and myself needing to go over to kind of literally pick it up and bring it over here. So we are looking still to continue those, looking for those options. I'm looking at schools that are in renovation right now to try to beg, borrow, and steal, but at the end of the day, we need a lot more than we can just try to find. So those classrooms that were outfitted with some of that new to us furniture have changed the way that classroom operates, and it's been incredible. Lastly, some things to consider from the capital and facility standpoint, as we would look to at the botany class, something we would look to also have is a greenhouse. Something simple as painting classrooms and hallways for maintenance purposes, as well as for being able to define sections of the building, define areas of the building, as opposed to just a very white, stark, neutral building. Let's provide students some opportunities as well as directions for our community to be able to see what is going on in this school and where does it exist. Handicap access to the athletics field, I know it's been placed in capital for several years. It's another thing that I think we'd like to consider. And Chromebooks, one-on-one, probably the biggest impact to our building right now, alongside the world language. The sheer dominoes that those two things have caused, I don't feel like the community really has a good sense of what it is between the 2.4 million kids, as well as a restructuring of our entire faculty meeting and staff meeting schedule, and the ability to be able to see students after school on any given day has really impacted our school community. Thank you.
Wow. Yes, sir.
Eric Verner, principal of the high school. So my first request, I know this will make Mr. Artie happy, is the restoration of a PE health teacher at the high school. This is in line with the electives that we'd like to be able to offer once again to students, but also to assist us in meeting the state requirement of our students having an increase in health, wellness, and safety requirements for graduation beginning with this current freshman class. Secondly, I'm requesting the restoration of a science teacher, which, tying into East Hampton 2030 would allow us to offer some more courses that I've spoken about in terms of AP Environmental Science, the UConn ECE course called Medical Terminology, again, to further the skills in areas of interest for our students. Third, I would request the restoration of a world language teacher at the high school. And this ties into the requests from my learning colleagues, which would enable us to offer AP Spanish at the high school. And again, tying into one of the goals or visions we have for 3030 at the high school, that all students have the opportunity to take either an AP or ECE or advanced course prior to graduation. Next, I would be requesting, the opportunity for distance learning to establish a Mandarin 1 course for students. We're investigating that currently, and I do have some experience with that from previous places where I've worked. And then lastly, the opportunity to establish a robotics club after school. We offer this as a course currently, and as a stipend request, this would fit in nicely with the offerings and interest level of our students.
What about math? Math teacher, additional math teacher. You just say covered by Sherry?
Yes.
Okay. Supported by you, covered by Sherry.
Supported by me, covered
Gotcha.
by Sherry.
Okay. Next. Everyone? Oh, hi.
Hi, Victoria Politano, special teacher at Center School. I would just like to second what Mr. Sullivan requested, especially the need for an additional special ed teacher and classroom
Yes, sir.
Hi, Adam DeWitowitz. I'm a parent in town. I'd like to advocate for the Board of Ed to take a look at the conditions of the baseball field at the high school. I've been lucky for the last 10 years to live next to the current high school baseball coach, and I myself am a high school coach in a neighboring town here. So I understand not only what sports provide, but what's wrapped up in the identity when it comes to the field. We're very lucky in East Hampton to have a very, very good Little League feeder program, which has very, very nice fields. And I know that he has struggled the last 2 years. I think we played 10 home games each year, and anywhere between 6 and 8 games in the last 2 years in particular have had to be played either in Portland, Budas, or have had to be rescheduled as away games because of the conditions of the field, creating safety issues for the players. And thinking about it from a player's perspective, certainly, if you have a field that is in need of repair, it's not, looking great, it does wrap up in the identity of the team. It does wrap up in the identity of the school. And when we have such a field program, to have kids that may make their decision about whether they want to play for their high school or not based on field conditions really conducive to playing, I think is something that we need to look at. So I would advocate for the town to take a look at the field and see if there's something that needs to be done to make it so that it's playable.
And just a note to the board, the high school and the Park and Recreation Department have worked together, and we were hoping to do something on the field, but it's not a quick fix. It's a drainage thing, and in New England, when baseball starts, March, April, it's not necessarily dry. In that baseball field, we've had terrible drainage issues historically, but now they're even worse. It's not a quick fix. We'll get.
And it would have to be a capital project, correct?
It would need to be under capital, but it's in the tens of thousands of dollars to do what we really need to do.
Can I, speaking of field conditions in back in the high school, the track. I mean, it's been years past where we should have resurfaced that track. I don't know if the sinking fund is close, but Joanna, you can tell me, I haven't been back there lately, but we have $2 million that we put into that. It's a shame to see it,
And in capital, there is a fund for track
There's been a
repairs
sinking
and
fund
replacement,
right,
but it has not been funded recently, and
Right,
I think
which
we're
is-
still about $50,000 to $75,000.
because the cost keeps going up and not funding it, we're digging a deeper and deeper hole, which is ridiculous. Our investment's gonna go, to be ruined, so, again,
Okay,
not good thinking.
thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Bob Honey, 19 Percival Road. As many of you know, I'm a sub up here, and somebody else mentioned something about a first-year Mandarin course, Chinese course, and I think that's something we should strongly consider, especially after a year ago going to China, and this next year going back to China. I've developed an understanding of what the U.S. is going to be competing against, and also cooperating with at times in terms of a country that's 1 billion people more than us. So it makes sense to pay attention to them and be able to speak to them on a different level. They teach all their kids Chinese starting at a very young age for the most part. And it might make some sense for us to start
English.
teaching
You mean
them
English?
Chinese.
You mean the Chinese teach their kids English?
Yeah, Chinese.
Yeah. They do have Chinese.
We were over there and talked to a couple of American teachers who said, if you want to come to China and teach English, you can make some nice money.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they don't worry about certification, just can you teach English?
Right, if you speak it, you can teach it.
But that's something I think we should consider, not this year, sometime in the year, as soon as possible.
Yep. Okay. Anyone?
Chris, I'll just
I was-
advocate
yeah,
in
okay.
support of some things that already came up. I think all of the different ideas that our budget needs to consider and reflect in the process that were shared tonight would only enhance the experience of our students. But there are some that are really speaking to the core functionality of the school system. I think with the population of students moving through the middle school, coming to the high school will struggle to function without a health teacher, a world language teacher, a math and a science teacher, just on numbers. Our middle school has very large class sizes right now. We're really understaffed there. and we don't have any wiggle room in the current high school staffing. World language at the middle school is, we are not functioning appropriately without that, given the amount of study halls that students are engaged in. Doesn't compare to districts in our region or in our DER. Andy talked about expanding foundations at Memorial School. Again, this is core functionality of a school system, looking at how we're teaching phonics and early reading skills, and I would really emphasize that to the district, that that's something we'll need to consider. Special education staff, beyond what Mr. Mosier referenced, will be necessary. Again, that's just look at the numbers of students and the hours that we have to support. That's just a core functionality of the district. Much like special education, the district has a responsibility to maintain a scientifically research-based intervention program, K-8. Right now we have that staff in a mix of certified and non-certified staff, and we really need to increase staffing, both certified and non-certified, to honor that state requirement. And really, everything that I've identified so far, it's almost all reinstatement of positions. So whether it's the health teacher, the world language, math and science, even special education, because we've reallocated teachers to new programming, it's really just reinstating the positions that we've historically had. I would also emphasize the need for Chromebooks and an ongoing commitment, as Irene stated. That again, that's core functionality, that's just basic operating systems. And something that wasn't brought up but that we'll need to look at is increasing sub-pay in the district as we struggle to attract and keep subs to staff our schools on a daily basis. That's a current problem that we have.
Okay. Board members, anyone? Thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just listening to the things that people are asking for, and you said, well, anything, and this is all very, very basic stuff. And when we're hearing that we're like picking up people's trash when they're doing renovations, and we're bringing that. And I mean, kudos, because
I could see him with his truck over there and throwing things in the back. Yep.
If that's working, that's great.
Yeah.
But like, if that's what we have to do because we are not funding them and they have to go pick up stuff on the curb, like that's disappointing to hear. And I think that, I mean, I understand that we have to prioritize and it's difficult, but I'm listening to all of this and I would have difficulty saying, well, that's not a priority. I mean, these are not things that aren't very basic things.
Like Mary said, core.
Yeah.
Core functioning, yeah.
So we'll publish this list tomorrow afternoon with approximate costs. We should have it done by noon. Karen and I will sit down, go through this extensive list.
Hi, Karen. Put you on the spot over there.
She's got enough done.
I'll have her work her magic so it doesn't look quite as scary. But we'll publish this list. Keep in mind, this is a preliminary list because buildings do not have to have their complete budgets to the principals until November 1st, which is Friday. And then the principals have to have all the material to the superintendent's office by November 15th. So expect just before Thanksgiving an updated list with things that may have come in through that process as well. This isn't the sole means of request. This is our most public one, but the buildings obviously are going to ask for an increase in certain things like supplies and other things like that. So that whole list will be available right before Thanksgiving. We'll get this preliminary list out. And then during the month of December, when everybody's singing happy Christmas songs, Karen and I are locked up in her office. I'm happy, she's sad. And then we both become miserable. And then in January, we emerge with what I hope will be a reasonable budget request. So at your January 13th meeting, which is Monday the 13th, we will present to you a preliminary budget for 2021.
And as always, our meetings are always open. Any other comments as time goes on? Love to hear them. All right, thank you everyone who spoke up. We appreciate that. Yeah, we'll let them go. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, you were.
I know, you okay there, Nancy? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we're going to continue. Now that everyone's leaving us. That's okay. We have liaisons. We have 3 members of the Board of Finance here. Anything Board of Finance sharing? No? Sorry? Oh, that's for your last meeting, yeah. Okay. Interboard liaison, or Neil? Teacher union?
I'm just quickly thanking for allowing us to speak at a meeting, and we'll try to have somebody from the HEA at every meeting, whether it's me or someone else.
Good. Perfect. Always welcome. Yeah. And then we have our updates from our principals. And Mary, you want to start?
Sure. I am doing a presentation tonight on student achievement data, so I'll be pretty quick. We are off and running into the school year, and so next week, Tuesday, November 5th, is our first full professional learning day for the staff. So each building has been busy preparing that plan and focusing whether it's preparing for the 2-year report for NEASC, or looking at our 612 science organization, or a new product that we're launching called Newsela, and rolling that out to teachers, which I'll talk about in a second. Everybody's geared up for that big event for us on Tuesday. We've had a training last week in support of the team process, which is the teacher induction process. So we manage that whole process in districts, which is a cost savings. And so we were able to ensure that all of our teachers who can serve as mentors, either for new teachers or student teachers, which is a great way to bring in extra supports to the classroom, can continue to do that. They requires continuing ed for them. As well as in that process, beginning teachers have to write papers that have to be scored. And so all of our scorers also get their training and keep that up and running, so we can manage that internally. In some districts, that's something that you send out at a fee, but we see that as a great way to grow our internal capacity, both in supporting beginning teachers and mentorships, and bringing in student teachers. So we had all of that last week. We have been really focused on math instruction. I'm excited to share our Smarter Balanced math results tonight. And so 2 weeks ago, our 6th through 8th grade math teachers were able to really dive into their Smarter Balanced assessment results and start that purposeful cycle of instructional planning and looking at how students were doing and what we need to do this year to make sure we continue to move each student forward. Over the next 2 days, we'll have some of that work going on at the K-5 level and continuing to enhance and grow our math practices. I mentioned Newsela. Newsela is a resource we're really excited about. Once again, we finagled a relationship with them because it's a free service that's gone to a cost structure. So we were able to work out a pilot with them. This is a resource we're using K through 8, and it's a digital library that allows us to provide content at varying reading levels for students, to look for through a large online library of nonfiction resources, so that we can ensure that our students have access to high quality text on current topics. And if we are able to continue a relationship with Newsela, that's a great way to expand our resources at a relatively manageable cost structure moving forward. So we've been working with helping the teachers learn how to use that resource and how they can apply that to their existing curriculum. We really see that as a benefit in our content area instruction in science and social studies, and it only enhances our hard print text copies for literacy. So we're excited about that.
What was the one we would have in Memorial School that the PTO?
The Mayan is a digital library, and Mayan was supported outside of our operating budget by the PTO.
Right.
And that's really a fiction and nonfiction, and it has assessment tools. And Newsela focuses more on nonfiction resources. Okay. They have a great middle school social studies toolkit, for example. They have some social emotional resources we're exploring. Because we're in a pilot, we kind of get to look at all the different tools that they're offering. We are considering, there's
Is it more for middle school age?
No, it's designed K-8, but I would say Mayan is best matched to primary learners.
Yeah.
We found that third or fourth through middle school, it wasn't as strong of a fit. There are a number of online libraries that are growing, and so we continue to explore which are the best. And we have some new requirements around student privacy that we have to honor, so we also look to partner with vendors who can support that. And Newsela can. So that's something we're excited about, and I hope to be able to feature that with you once we've gotten to use it a little bit more and show you how that tool works.
Okay, thank you. Schools, turn it over, or who wants to start it off?
I'll go first this time, I'll go backwards. So, on October 16th, the hard work of myself and all of our 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students took the PSAT, and we're looking forward and really excited about getting that data back. And they tell us mid-November, which really means early December, so we're looking forward to getting that information back in the hands of teachers. Two Saturdays ago, we had our 9th annual Relay for Life, sponsored by Ms. Pesca and the Rotary Track Club. That group has raised just short of $100,000 over that time for cancer research. There were almost over 100 students there. I think I walked 2 miles. I was kind of a slacker, talking to the kids a little too much, but that was a great day. November 14th, we have a very great big day at the high school that Mr. Warner's been working really hard on, which is Wellness Day, and I'm going to talk about that in 1 second. And then this past Saturday, we had a great day, great performance by our cross-country teams. Jake Ireland won the class double S individual championship, and the boys won the team championship. And I just found out that Jake will be on the CIAC website tomorrow, so please take the opportunity to vote. He's been nominated as one of the potential athletes of the week. So please take the opportunity to do that. I'll send out some information when that's available. And the girls finished second in Class S, and Liv DiStefano was the runner-up in Class S for the girls, and both teams will be running the state open on Friday if the weather cooperates.
Nice.
So in short, the Wellness Day, I think it's on November 14th, full day event. There's going to be 4 sessions broken across the day. We have a lot of groups and professionals coming into the school to discuss various topics with our students. Some of the topics are racism, mental health, anxiety, substance abuse, 21st century addiction, self-esteem, body image, stress, academic burnout, and inclusivity and acceptance. Following these group panel discussions, students then can transfer for about 20 minutes to work with a variety of staff members on things that they do to help them work through some of their stressors in their life. And they'll be able to do that 3 more times in a rotation throughout the day. So they'll have a variety of experiences, not only to kind of learn about some of the hard things that they might face on a daily basis, or maybe their friends or loved ones kind of see and have to deal with. So whether they can be kind of a support network for them, but then also learn strategies and things that they can do to try to help them out, or something that they might use on their own. So it's going to be a full day affair. Looking forward to it.
Nice.
Sounds great.
Alright, middle school, try to keep it short, I have my budget portion a little long. Unity Day was a couple weeks ago. We had it in Middletown, in Power Leadership. Donna Marshall comes every year and gives a really powerful speech, and we had several of our student council and our early act members go to that. Mandy's for a Cure was kind of a joint effort with the high school. We sent a number of early act students up to that, and I believe they raised on the first day, it was at least $600 towards breast cancer research. The 6th graders last week also went to Empower Leadership for a kind of customized team building activity day. It was really powerful to get our 6th graders all together and get them all on the same page, really acting more like a middle school family than just little 6th graders running around each for themselves. So they each gave a lot of really good feedback on that. Really appreciate it and look to continue that tradition. We have our Halloween bash this Thursday for our 6th graders. As mentioned earlier, the boys cross country team came in first place in the conference. Girls came in second, so congratulations to both of them. Before Mr. Kissinger kind of shared some updates from the Commons, we do have a 7th and 8th grade dance this Friday. We're always looking for chaperones if anybody's interested.
No, sorry. No.
Pretty minor stuff for our comments.
I know. Sorry, we're just still like, no, we're not Chapter.
You get a 10?
No.
There was a quick survey around the table.
No, sorry. Sorry, Eric. Yeah.
But, you know, just some minor updates from our comments where our students eat. We looked at our students, we obviously want our students to be responsible for themselves, cleaning up after themselves. And we realized that what we were having them clean up with was just outdated and broken and didn't work. And so with a pretty prudent and financially conservative approach, we purchased some new cleaning supplies for them. And, you know, our commons or our cafeteria set is a great lunch. So if you ever want to come by for lunch and also kind of observe them being responsible and cleaning up after themselves, they're doing a great job. So.
Good.
Center School, we're experiencing, well, Connecticut has to offer with some of our field trips. For 5th grade, we visited the Mashantucket Pequot Museum 2 weeks ago. That was a 5th grade trip. For the 4th grade, Mystic Seaport. They went in 2 waves this past Thursday and Friday. The weather worked out perfectly. I'd like to thank also last Thursday Fire Marshal Klasbeer for coming with the fire safety trailer. Always a great experience and to make sure that our students have a plan when they need it most, when there happens to be a fire. We did some research. The #1 requested item in shelters were actually socks, so that prompted our Socktober. We did fill one of the bins in our front lobby, so thank you to the parent community for that. We're moving on to canned goods for Thanksgiving to help out those in need. We're off and running with a lot of our student clubs and options, student council, Center School Press, Climbing Club, Game Chromebook Club, all kicked off in the month of October. I'd also like to thank Jen Bove. Last week we had our Connecticut Grown apple tasting. Karen Aceto was on site as well, and the Yellow Delicious took #1.
Okay.
Memorial had this week as well. Author Brendan Wenzel came and inspired our 1st grade readers and writers. The mobile trailer did come to Memorial as well, with a focus on how to react in severe weather or fire. We continued the tradition of the East Hampton Rotary Club donating dictionaries to our 3rd grade students. And our Smart Start program took a road trip to Hearst Farm. As Mrs. Clark mentioned earlier, we're really looking forward to continuing our work towards one of our building goals with math workshop with some in-house PD tomorrow.
Karen or Rodney, anything? Okay.
Just a note, and congratulations to Karen for representing East Hampton so well. She was a presenter at a national conference in Washington, D.C., and her topic was joint services between communities and featured our cafeteria program. So, Karen, I don't know if you want to...
That was the gist of exactly what I spoke about it. By getting a income from another community, we're able to hire a professional, experienced food service director with the goal of making the program be an important part of our school day and deeper involved in the school to make it all a value-added service to our community.
Good job.
Good job.
Okay, audience of citizens, we have a few left here. Any comments? Hearing none. We'll move on. Motion to approve the consent agenda. So moved. Mark, second.
Second.
Joanne, comments? All those in favor? Aye. Committee reports. That's your guys, sir.
So as far as athletics, boys soccer team finished the regular season with a record of 4 wins, 5 losses, and 6 ties, and they are going to be advancing to the state tournament. The girls soccer team finished the regular season as well with a record of 7 wins, 5 losses, and 3 ties, and they're additionally advancing to the state tournament. Volleyball has 1 more game left in the regular season, which is this Wednesday, and is also their senior night. And after that, they're going to be advancing to the Shoreline Tournament and the state tournament. And as previously mentioned, both cross-country teams had great success at the Class AA state championships.
The fall dance was in the beginning of October. That was planned by the student council, and many students attended and enjoyed themselves. Also, since the last meeting, the seniors went on their trip to DC, which was an incredible experience. It was so fun. The Interact Club, Mr. Berner touched on this, but we had Relay for Life, which raised a lot of money this year. We had over $13,500 just this year in our club and Early Act. There were some members there, which I think is just an amazing thing that they started that at the middle school. Man is Fair Cure also was touched on, but it was also a really great cause, and we raised a lot of money for that. And again, the Early Act students there, it's just really inspiring to see them getting involved in the community early on. Senior Superheroes is going to be on Thursday. That is put on by National Honor Society, and the bidding has already started at lunch break, so that will be really fun. And the senior dance is scheduled for November 26th, and I know a lot of the seniors are looking forward to that.
So Emma, you went to DC this year?
Yes.
What was your favorite thing?
Probably the Smithsonian's. It was just like nothing I've ever seen before. It was so cool. Yeah, it was great.
Good.
I think the picture is already up of the senior class. Did I see the picture?
Yes, I think
On the
that's
DC?
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta go see that.
Yes.
Great. Wow.
Good job. All right. Personnel, nothing except that last Tuesday, town council meeting. Karen, Paul, myself, and Bridget were at executive session for the town council. Answered questions, had dialogue regarding the administrator contract that was presented, and they got out of executive session and voted unanimously in favor of it. So again, thank you to all the administrators. You're all here tonight. Great job, thank you. Yeah. Policy and curriculum.
Policy met just prior to this meeting, so we'll have 5 or 6 first reads next time, and there are some second reads later on the agenda.
Finance, transportation, building grounds.
Has
Last
not.
time I can say that to you.
Yeah. Somebody new doing it. Has not met, but obviously we did start a budget season
Yep.
tonight.
Good.
So-
And learn.
I missed the last board of directors meeting because of a traffic jam. Would have taken me an hour to get there and missed half the meeting, so I turned around and came home. Executive board was last Friday, and nothing really to speak of. Obviously, that board's going to be going through changes as people leave and new people come. So we'll see what happens there. One thing I did want to mention on another note, and I just mentioned something to Paul and to Eric, this Friday night, the East Hampton Athletic Hall of Fame Committee is going to be inducting Bill Wilkie into its Hall of Fame. So that's a great honor for him. I know he coached my son in my daughter in cross country and track, and my son in track, and just an amazing coach and an amazing person. So I am personally thrilled for him, and we'll be going to the dinner. I usually go when they know somebody that's being inducted. There's also a baseball team from the 50s or 60s that's being inducted, a championship team, and I don't remember the other person. I think it's a person or a group, I'm not sure. But I'm gonna, remind those guys to send you invitations, because you should know who's being inducted, and if you can, to go to the dinner, because it's a great event. I've been a bunch of times, and it's always so heartwarming, what these kids achieve in teams, and
Where are they holding it this year?
it's always at the Black Ledge Country Club in Hebron.
Okay.
So if anybody's interested in going, you can still come. I think it starts at 6, but talk to me. So thank you.
Okay. Your turn.
Just one item, very briefly, just because some people wonder why we start the budget process at the end of October. If you work your way backwards, the board needs to approve a budget by February 24th at your meeting, because we're required to have it in the town hall on March 1, which means on February 29th, we will be delivering a budget, since March 1 is over the weekend. So if you work backwards, it gives you 2 budget workshops, the February 10th and January 27th. And then the first time you see it is January 13th. It takes Karen and I, after we get it from the principals, about a month to put it all together. So even though it's end of October, to have everything ready to go, the process right now, we consider it in full swing. I will be publicizing all of the events so that people have the opportunity to learn as much about the budget as they can.
And we do have a presentation from you and Mary.
Actually, from Eric and Mary.
Eric and Mary. I'm sorry, Eric. I'll move.
Mary, my
I'll go sit over here.
Data. So as you know, every school year we engage in our state summer assessment cycle that takes place in the spring. That data is initially released to us about June, and then ultimately it is finalized in September. So we receive that, we take a look at it, and typically in October I present it to you. So we'll take a look at that. I'm going to speak to you about the results of the Smarter Balanced Assessment, which, as you by now, hopefully it trains you well, is given in grades 3 through 8 in math and literacy. I'll also talk to you about the new Next Generation Science Standards Assessment that's only given in grades 5, 8, and 11. And then Mr. Werner will speak to you more about achievement data at the high school. So we'll kind of bring you chronologically through that process. So starting off with the assessment system, Smarter Balanced is an assessment system. We engage with this tool throughout the school year. It's not a one-time event. Initially, there's a digital library which provides school districts across the state with instructional tasks and opportunities to develop skills in the areas of math and reading. Then there are interim assessments which allow us to take very short, targeted mini assessments related to the Smarter Balanced Assessment, and then ultimately there's a spring assessment. The summative assessment is our state's response to both its own expectations for annual assessment, but also federal guidelines and requirements for assessments given annually each year in math and literacy, grades 3 through 8. That's a federal mandate. And so we utilize this system throughout the school year to measure our progress towards those annual goals. As we know, mathematics and literacy are assessed by Smarter Balanced. And when this was introduced earlier, about a decade ago at this point, it was really seen as a more rigorous assessment than what Connecticut had previously been using to measure its annual performance, both in terms of the expectations for problem solving and transfer of skill in mathematics, but also the range of skills that students had to demonstrate in literacy, making sure that students can read and write across genres and for different purposes, as well as engage in research and communicate their findings. So we'll take a look at the results in a second, but I'll just kind of give you some background. First of all, the data release process under Smarter Balanced continues to improve. So one of the complaints under our old system of assessments, the CMT, is that it took a long time to get results. The assessment at one time was given in September, then moved to March, and we might not see those results until the following fall. But now the assessment wraps up at the end of May, and we are given access to what they call raw data in June. So we kind of have a sense pretty early on of how we did. But then the state goes through a process to ensure that the data is accurate. If there's any delayed results for any reason, anything that requires human scoring, and they go through a whole review process over the summer and update that information for us in September. So individual student reports, are shipped to the school district in September, which we then send home to families. And that format and the way that information is communicated is something that the state has worked out with their vendor who analyzes that data. But all of our families would have received their child scores in the area of math and literacy if they're in grades 3 through 8. A reminder that one of the ways that we use this data is to not only measure our success and to see how our school district is performing in relation to others, but our state heavily uses it to determine what they call our accountability index. Those are not released until later in the year. So last year they said they'd be ready in December, they were released in February. They are saying December again this year, so as soon as we receive those, we will let you know. But the accountability index is a tool that looks at our performance in our academic areas, so math and reading, for example, but also looks at a number of other factors. The State Department of Education wanted to ensure that they were measuring schools on a range of performance indicators because schools support students in so many different ways. So for example, absenteeism is a feature in that accountability index report, PE performance, arts access, on track to college and career readiness. There's a number of variables that are utilized, but heavily referenced is a district's performance on its math and literacy scores. So how did the assessment go this year, or last spring, is when we actually gave it? We had a very smooth implementation of the assessment without issue. We have committees at each building that oversee the scheduling and rollout and staff training, and we coordinate those events across the district, and everything went smoothly. Test administration, the teachers go through a specific training. They have access to scripts and all kinds of resources to support them. We do use the interim assessments, and so students and staff are familiar with the assessment platform that we have to utilize. It's a very specific test engine that the assessment is conducted within, and so everyone's pretty comfortable and familiar with that process by the May administration. Our network has to be able to manage the traffic of the assessment. We have a lot of students assessing in the district when we give this, and that I have to give a lot of credit to our IT department who works tirelessly to ensure that the buildings can handle the volume of traffic of the assessment, everyone logging on, and that went well. Our Chromebooks last year were working well, and we were sufficiently equipped with the appropriate number of Chromebooks, so that certainly makes for a much smoother assessment process. That's something we're going to need to plan for differently this year. So our middle school had a strong performance and gains in both areas, and we not only look at our instructional practices, but we also look at how we actually give the test to students to ensure the best possible experience. And without that one-to-one model, we're not going to be able to replicate the way we gave the assessment this year. So we'll have to make adjustments. But our IT staff is great about spanning across the district and ensuring that they're in each building to answer any questions and to support, so that our ultimate goal is that a student doesn't feel stressed out in the moment because a computer's not working. We want them to focus on showing what they know and doing their very best, and our IT staff really helps with that. I referenced TIDE, that's the test information distribution engine that the assessment lives on, and that system the state continues to refine and enhance, and it's really working quite smoothly right now. And we have very strong participation. That is an important factor. If you have less than 95% participation, you are penalized by the State Department of Education in terms of your rating on your accountability index. And that's not just overall student population, that's by school, and that's within high needs groups within subject areas. So they look at every single student population and whether or not they participated in every single test at every single school. And if you're under 95% in any area at any building, it affects that school's overall rating. We're pretty confident that our participation rates were strong this past year. If you look at that last bullet, going all the way back to 2015, we had only 93%. Close to 94% participation. That's steadily increased. We had 97.1% last year, and this year 98.1% of our students participated. And we work closely with classroom teachers and our special education staff to ensure that any child that requires accommodations on the assessment is able to access those accommodations at the summative point in May, but also whenever they take an interim. So our students are always able to take the assessment with the supports that they need. And something that the State Department has done quite nicely is they've embedded a lot of accommodations directly in the test. So it makes it much easier to manage and to ensure that students seamlessly access those supports. So overall, a positive assessment experience. I'm going to invite you to look on, if you have a hard copy, it might be easier to see these numbers. On page 3, students are rated in their performance on math and reading in a on a scale of 1 to 4, 3 being the standard or the target that we're hoping all students can achieve, and 4 exceeding. So you can see the breakdown there of each grade level and how many students, the percentage of students who performed at level 1, 2, 3, or 4. And the one that I've highlighted in red is students, the percentage of students that's scoring 3 or above. So those are students who've met or exceeded the target for their grade level. So you can take a look and you'll notice that I have some historic data for you in a second, but you'll be able to see in most grade levels we're well above 60%. And there is some variability between grade levels, and we look at the student performance across sort of cohort years to guide whether or not we see growth in our student population. I'll give you a minute to take a look at those numbers. You have them for literacy, and then the next slide is for math. I'm going to talk a little bit about how our scores fall in line with sort of the trends across the state.
Mary?
Yes?
I see in math, the 6th grade is a little low.
Yep.
And I'm just
It's the one
thinking,
area that's below state average.
yeah, is, you know, if you look back 2-3 years ago when these kids were in same school earlier on,
They would have been more.
the years we had kind of a...
Their
There's
primary
something-
grades would have been prior to the adoption of a standards-aligned math program for that grade level. That's true of the ones ahead of them as well. So we look at each grade level performance in relation to its own past performance. So are they gaining over where they started, as opposed to...
Because with math, we've been so, you know, with especially center school those few years ago, where there wasn't materials and there was some issues.
Prior to 2015, there was
some
a
classes,
few
at one
years
point,
there.
some classes are going to have issues, which is
Yes.
the history of what they've had as math programs.
Yeah, I think in 2 areas, we're just starting to see at the middle school consistent standards-aligned implementation of a math program. But all of your learners, 4th grade and up, would have had inconsistent math instruction in their early years of, and when I say inconsistent, they didn't have one common tool that was implemented with fidelity across classrooms at a grade level and then vertically aligned. So it meant that there might be opportunities where there could be gaps because of that inconsistent resource. That's been a big focus of the district since 2015, is to ensure that we have guaranteed learning expectations for every grade level, that teachers have access, and I'll talk about this a little bit at the end of the presentation, to common tools and resources, that they're consistently reflecting on student performance data, talking about common spots where they are recognizing we have a deficit area, we want to boost instruction, or how our students are really, you know, thriving in this one area and we can move forward. And we've really built those systems and structures with consistent resources in the last 4 to 5 years. If you look at the trend data slide, this one shows you the total number of students who had scored assessments, and that's because there's always going to be a little bit of a gap between the total number of enrolled students and those with scored assessments, because as I already indicated, not everyone takes the assessment. And then it tells you the percentage who met 3 or 4, and it goes all the way back from 15, 16. So what you can see when you look across is in ELA, we started only 57% in 2015, 2016. We're earning 3 or 4, so the goal or above. And now we're up to 65.9. So we've seen continuous steady progress each year. And that's true in both math and literacy. Additionally, you can see here, this breaks out each grade level, because you might have that question, how is a group performing over time? And what gains have we seen this year in particular in each of our grade levels? And our performance falls in line with state trends. We are performing higher in literacy than math, which is the trend across the state of Connecticut, as you'll see in a minute in our DER comparison chart. This year, across
this chart we're reading diagonally. This is grade.
You can look across to see how the grade level did each year, but you can follow a group if you follow it diagonally.
So it does,
Yep. And you'll see there's, even when we look at the DER comparison chart, districts year to year show some volatility. So a group may have pockets of significant growth, and then they may sort of have a plateau for a year. And each year the teachers are looking at that data to look for those kinds of trends. Where we definitely don't want to see is any time where our scores are going down. And if we find that, then that's something we're going to pay close attention to. In the area of literacy this year across the state was pretty neutral. In fact, I'll draw your attention, you have the district reference group comparison chart where you can see where East Hampton fell. These are districts, as you eyeball them, you'll see really present a range of communities, everything from Windsor to Southington to Newington to Clinton to Cromwell to Berlin to East Hampton, but this is our DER. The state has defined for us and helps us to measure our performance. At the bottom of that chart, you'll see the state of Connecticut average, percentage of students scoring in that 3 or 4 band. So in ELA, we are well above the state average. But you can see the state growth was pretty neutral, only an improvement of 0.4% in more students scoring in that 3 or 4 band goal or above. And yet in East Hampton, we had an increase of 2.6%. So that was nice to see that in a year that a lot of states communities either lost ground or kind of held neutral, that we improved. In mathematics, we were in line with the state trend. A lot of communities were seeing stronger gains in math. I think because much like East Hampton, districts were concerned. Historically, the last few years, districts haven't been growing in math. And so I think a lot of districts have been very reflective about their mathematics practices and instruction. We certainly have been focused there. We're very proud of our math improvement this year, having increased 7.2% of students scoring in that goal or exceeding goal bands. We have the 3rd highest growth in our DER. So only 2 districts outperformed us. So that's very exciting, and really, I have to give a lot of credit at each of the buildings. Teachers have been working very closely with their instructional specialists, with any of the coaching we've been able to provide them to really rethink their mathematics instruction, embrace their new tools, and ensure that all students have access with fidelity to those skills. There's another aspect to the way Smarter Balanced Achievement is monitored that I'd like to speak about, because we can look at that flat score of achievement, and you can look at those charts across years and see, oh, this, a certain group might consistently improve. There might be a year that they hold or dip, and then they continue to gain ground the next year. So we're always looking at those achievement levels, but we also really want to measure growth. And this is a very distinct difference in the state's attitude towards how we celebrate success in schools. That it's not just how many students are able to score a 3 or a 4, but is each child growing? Because if the same students are getting 3s and 4s, then we're not really moving other learners into that performance level. And if I'm a 3 every year and no one's pushing me to the 4, then I'm also not getting what I need potentially. And so we have 2 ways that the state looks at a district's growth. First is they set an individual target for every child on Smarter Balanced, and they let you know what percentage of your students met that target. But they recognize, like any of us in life, when we set a goal, we might fall short of it. And so they don't just measure whether or not you met it, yes or no. They also measure what percentage did you achieve of that growth target. So if I'm supposed to grow 100 points, and I grow 95, I've come really close, and that's still worth celebrating, because that means our students are making great gains. They may have felt a little short, but they're on their way. So it also gives more precise feedback to schools, because we can really look at students and say, wow, over here we have a group of learners who's not approaching their growth target. They're really not moving. And over here we have students who, while they fell short, they're super close. So what can we do differently to help them meet that growth target? Ideally, we want them to meet the growth target and get there, but knowing if they fell just short of it, that's a different need than a student who's not approaching it at all. This one's a little hard to see the way it's set up from the state, so I'll walk you through that. They've got 2 things next to each other. On the left is the growth rate, so that's just, are you meeting the target? And you can see there, they give it to you by school year, and it definitely printed a little small, I apologize, but you can see, depending on the grade level, we have room to grow in the percentage of students who are achieving their growth target. But if you bring your eye over to the far column all the way to the right, in 18-19, you can see that in some grade levels, students are really consistently achieving a good portion of their growth target. So our fourth graders, they were at 75.6. They're making gains, even if they're falling short of their target. They're still showing growth within their individual performance. Same thing, seventh grade, we see 76.2% of the growth target is achieved on average. So we're still seeing gains for those learners.
Mary, who sets the individual targets of the kids?
The targets are set by the State Department of Education.
And how rigorous is that growth target?
I would say it's
hard to meet?
Yes, I would say it's hard to meet. I think it is, saying it's hard to meet, it's going to depend on the learner, but it's a far goal for a lot of students, yeah. So, and it's based on a formula. It's the psychometricians establish that, and depending on your score, it kicks out what your next individual growth target is. We don't necessarily, we look at the trends to know whether or not our students are growing. State doesn't recommend that we sit down and look at every single child's individual growth target for Smarter Balanced. So the assessment isn't something that you can mimic and say, if you just do these kind of problems, you're going to improve. It's really about their overall skills and helping them know how to transfer those skills to novel circumstances. So, which is different than our past state assessment system, which was highly, you could replicate that easily and give students just lots of practice, and then they could do that kind of question. But we're trying to grow more creative thinkers and problem solvers, and so the state is saying we want to set that target, but as you can see, they anticipate we need to celebrate success towards that target in a number of ways.
I'm sorry. When I heard what you said, I'm still having a hard time grasping it, so I'm going to ask you to try to explain it to me again. So I'm just going to take fourth grade.
Yep.
So we had 42.9% of students
achieved their growth target.
Achieved their growth target.
Yeah, which means if the state said, we'll just use simple numbers, you have to grow by 100 points, 42% of them grew by 100 points.
Okay.
At least, if not more.
Right. So minimum, all right, so going into, well, then fourth grade is probably not a great movement. All right, so 42.9% achieved their growth target.
Yep.
And then, so now what is the 75%?
On average, 75% of that growth target was achieved, meaning that if you were supposed to, again, if you're supposed to get 100 points, you got about 75.
So for simplicity's sake, and I know there's some that are over it, but let's say we have 42.9% of our students get to 100.
Mm-hmm.
And of the, let's say there were 100 students, so that's 10,000 points. So we got 7,560 points.
Right.
Okay.
So you can see that with that average, you're going to have some students who are going well over their target, and some students who are, when you look at it with only 42% meeting the target, but 75% of the points earned, it's distributed unevenly amongst the student population.
So what we just learned tonight was I didn't meet my language arts target, but I got my math target.
And we have students who definitely have differences that way.
Never doubting your math target.
So it's really like just that yes or no, did you get it or not? And then what average, and the way that this is really looking at the numbers globally, we can dive down by grade level. That's all publicly available on EdSite, ct.gov, which is the state's information engine where they share all of their assessment data. At a future board meeting, I can show you that this new section called the Connecticut Report Card that also kind of takes all the data the state has on all school districts and shares it. So this comes directly from their reports, and they allow you to break it down by the district or even to each grade level. So with the growth target information, I didn't go as deep into the grade level for this presentation, but you can look at that to see how it's distributed more specifically. But what we can see is that when this was coming online for school districts, a lot of school districts were anxious about growth being a measure on their accountability index. Regardless of the nature of or the composition of that school district. Very high achieving districts were concerned about that because it's hard to achieve growth when learners are already performing at a high standard. Districts that historically had low scores were concerned that they're already fighting, very hard in their schools each day to meet the needs of their learners, and this would be another challenge. But it's really there to show that within every school, we can reflect on whether or not we're giving our students the opportunity to grow as individuals, and not just look at the general scores of a grade level. And I would say what it tells us, as it does many other districts, is that growth continues to be an area that we need to focus on, that all students are achieving and growing. So there's a lot of positives overall. Our grade level percentages of students at that level of 3 or above are above the state average in math and in ELA. We see achievement in improvement in growth for students at various grade levels. We have improvement in our math and literacy scores, despite the fact that we have fewer teachers teaching in math and literacy this year than the year before, the year that this was given. That we have really are starting to see the impact of the fidelity to instructional models and vertical alignment that we've been working towards for many years. So the fact, if I go back to that slide that shows the continuous improvement each year in math and literacy since 2015, there aren't a lot of districts that can show a continuous improvement trend in the state, where they might have a spike where they show improvement, but then they lose some ground the next year. So we are seeing continued growth each year. We haven't lost ground, and so that's something we're excited about. Science. I'm going to bring your attention to the next generation science assessment. Last year I informed you that we were going to be implementing for the first time a new science assessment. So the state migrated from the Connecticut Mastery Test for Science, CMT Science, to the next generation science standard assessment. We gave it in 2017-2018 as just a pilot. The only accountability attached to the assessment that year was participation rate. This past year in May, we gave it achievement attached. So we were going to get scores. This is our baseline data. It's the first time the test has been given in the state. We have no comparison data at this time. We don't have past experience to inform us. The state has only released assessment results to individual districts. So unlike our scores in math and literacy, where I can say last year we were 20th in our DIRG of 24 districts in math, and this year we're 16th, and we're really proud of that, moving up 4 places in our DIRG in our math performance. I can't compare our science performance to any other district because I don't have access to their data yet. The state has just released individual reports for science performance. They arrived in my office last week, and they'll be going home to families later this week. So you can see in your packet our performance level in grades 5, 8, and 11. You can see the number of students tested. Again, it's the same system of a 1, 2, 3, and 4. The percentage of students who scored 3 or above, meaning they met that goal or exceeded it. And then you can see the distribution for students across the 3 grade levels that they're assessed in, grades 5, 8, and 11. If you're asking what I think of this data without having seen any other district's performance, I would say we were pleased with our performance in grades 5 and 8. That it actually, as baseline data, every training, an opportunity to engage directly with the State Department of Education about science, they've said, we're not expecting the first year's data to really tell us much. It's a baseline. It's the first time you give the assessment. The scores will be low, and we'll learn from there. So having already 65% of our 5th graders at goal or above, and 63% of our 8th graders, I would say that outperformed our expectations. Looking at our 11th grade, having 38% at goal or above on an assessment that they had never really seen before, doesn't totally surprise us. They have had the least preparation. They're looking at 11th grade NGSS aligned skills when they didn't come up through an NGSS aligned curriculum. So it would be, the difference there is asking someone to, run a half marathon who's been training versus someone who hasn't. The 11th graders have not had access to that NGSS curriculum. We followed the state's implementation guideline in aligning our curriculum to the NGSS standards, as did many other districts across the state. Their recommendation was to start in grades K through 3, grade 6, and grade 9. So we really emphasized a lot of our resources. We have limited resources in this district, K through 3 and 6. We started to implement at the high school last year, so the 11th graders just haven't had that preparation. I expect the state trend to be similar, that grades 5 and 8 will outperform grade 11 in school districts across the state, again, just for practical purposes. Each year after this, our students will have had access to NGSS curriculum, to the interim assessments where they get to see the task items. The teachers have been growing in that area. We're excited to see that our efforts at the K-5 and middle school level are already starting to bear fruit in our first year. We've been working towards our math scores for 5 years, and our science scores outperformed them. So we're excited to see these results this early in the process. Obviously, we expect more for our juniors moving forward, but I think in this first year of baseline data, I think East Hampton will be similar to many districts across the state.
So the grade 11, looking by the numbers, I think we'll but all juniors are taking this?
Yes, we had 116. I think there were more juniors than that 116, but like a handful didn't take it. I don't have those exact numbers.
So I assume there's no adjustment because we get to high school, you're now taking electives, you're making decisions when I'm taking my science classes, when I'm not taking my science classes. So I guess there's no real, I'm not sure how you do this, but there's no...
The test does not take that into consideration.
Right, no analysis of it to take that into.
So one of the things I think we'll see pretty quickly, districts across the state will want to see data from their peers and then look for where are pockets of success. What have you done to achieve that, and look for best practices. It's the same cycle that happens every time the state introduces a new assessment. We move into that assessment process, we assess where we are, we look for promising practices, and we look to give our district access to them. I think that alignment of courses is one thing all high schools are wrestling with. The former CMT capped at the high school level was more of an interdisciplinary performance task. It wasn't a content assessment. So it's a real difference for a high school state assessment that's not in line with Connecticut's past practice.
Now, our graduation requirements, and I apologize for not remembering these, but so we transition to the next stage of the graduation requirements. Are we going to be having 4 credits of science for graduation?
Well, the students are going to have that sort of STEM suite of high school graduation requirements, where they can take their STEM classes, a combination of science and math.
Okay, so they're more likely going to have more, as we move forward, you're not going to have the probability of students who have not taken multiple science classes, because somebody can choose, okay, I'm going to take biology, I'm going to take my 9th grade science, and I'm not going to take biology until my junior year.
Right.
Because I just have my minimum science.
I think we expect to see less of that, as well as making sure that every science course is aligned to the approach of next-gen science. So for example, we have a forensics elective that we're offering this year that we're aligning to next-gen, because it's really looking at an inquiry model in science instruction. So it's giving students the opportunity to problem solve independently, and that's not, it's a bit of a shift in the instructional model as opposed to standing order. And so all of the science classes are taking a look at that, regardless of what type of science course it is, with the exception of, say, AP is sort of a set curriculum.
Right. In the class of 2023, the current freshmen, the science graduation requirements, it's 3 credits. So most students will take 3 freshman, sophomore, junior year. If someone misses 1 year, they'll at least have 2 years of science prior to before their junior year. And I just looked, there's 119 members of the senior class. I don't know if there's been any additions or subtractions from last year, but so that means 116 out of 119 students took it last year based on those numbers.
So when we look at particularly math and literacy, because science has been a little bit different, we have some at this point vetted practices that we consider to be sort of supportive of positive gains in our district. We are assessing late in the school year to ensure the maximum instructional time, but we have to really monitor that to find the sweet spot, where it's late enough in the year that students have access to a full year's instruction, but early enough that they're not, wanting to go to field day the next day. So we're always looking to balance that. Additionally, the interim assessment blocks have been incredibly helpful to our teachers and to our students because they can really work with the assessment items closely. These are non-secure items, so you can look at them as a class, you can work in groups, and so that's really different from past state assessment models. And in science, those interim assessments were released during the school year last year, so we didn't have access to all of them all year. Math and literacy, we have a whole assessment plan of when we give them, but in science, they came out over the course of the year, so we had to kind of phase them in as they were available. We're excited that we're going to have earlier access to them this year. And again, the assessment environment matters. It's all computer-based assessments, so how to navigate that portal. The science component includes some virtual labs, and the students need experience and practice in that setting. We continue to support and grow our data analysis practices. Each of the buildings, teachers are reviewing student performance data and looking at what's the next appropriate instructional step for each learner. And then I have to give a lot of credit to our instructional coaches, our literacy specialists, our math specialists. We have a pretty thin staffing model for that compared to a lot of districts, and I feel like that team puts in a ton of effort to work closely with classroom teachers to help them make sense of their data and to make decisions for their students. As you know, we have 2 literacy specialists at Memorial School of over 600 children, 1 at center, 1 at middle, that's new this year. So we haven't even seen the impact of that yet at the middle school. We have 1 staff member who supports math and science, K-5, and she not only is really there to support curriculum and coaching, but also she's leading the intervention programming at both Memorial and center schools. So she's sort of 4 people. And then we have 1 part-time coach in math at the middle school. So we're proud of that growth, and that team has been a huge help. And to continue our growth, we're really thrilled with the results we've seen in the Readers and Writers Workshop model. As this board knows, we expanded that to the middle school this year. I have to give a lot of credit to our middle school ELA team. We completely redesigned that team. As we were looking, we knew we had cuts for teachers, and we cut that team from 8 to 4 teachers, and they've embraced new learning in that area and are implementing those new units of study. So we're excited to see their results. A big component is increasing students' access to text resources. You heard me talking about Newsela earlier. We've invested in classroom libraries K-8. Our students have rich libraries to pull from to grow their skills in fiction and nonfiction, to grow their stamina in reading. The volume, how much they're reading, and how long they're reading. Language development. There's a ton of brain research right now coming out about how the brain maps for reading, and really focusing on that language development. So you've heard Mr. Gonzalez and I talk a bit about foundations in K1, and we're really excited about this approach to teaching phonological awareness and phonics to our students, and growing that all the way through 3rd grade, and then continuing our spelling program through 5th grade. Sorry, that jumped around. We continue to support our teachers in their meeting schedule. Teachers need time to collaborate and to look at student performance data to continue to earn these improvements. So again, we've seen gains each year, and that's from their process of knowing their learners and planning for instruction. Our intervention system, our tiered instruction, not just in the primary classroom, but anytime we see a student who has additional needs, making sure that as our staffing allows, we're able to give them reteaching for any deficit skill areas in math and literacy. Partnering with special education, our literacy and math consultants work with our special education teachers to ensure that any student who needs a modified curriculum has access to the right supports. And similarly in math, we have really reflected on the success of the Readers and Writers Workshop program, and so we're bringing a workshop approach to mathematics, so that in addition to a core math curriculum, we're grouping students in small groups and giving them as much personalized instruction as possible. You've heard us talk a lot about personalized learning. That's something we're rolling out in Math K-8, really ensuring that our students are engaged in mathematical problem solving, promoting math discourse, looking at real-world problems and having students explain their reasoning. This is a key component of our math environment. This takes a lot of support for classroom teachers as they look to grow these practices in their classroom. I already mentioned our collaborative structures. We continue to promote core skill development. Math fluency is a key aspect of our K-3 instructional environment. We continue to use the Reflex Math program in addition to other tools. This board has supported that. And then our intervention systems. Earlier in the budget program, I mentioned that we sort of need to grow that support. We currently use a mix of non-certified and certified staff to support any students who are demonstrating that they might have a skill deficit. And I just appeal to the board, you'll hear me talk about it more, that having certified teachers do that work is really critical. I think that's the kind of thing that we would see our scores really move, because right now our certified staff is overseeing non-certified staff, and in many districts they've moved to a full certified model for that. When we look at our kindergarten class sizes, for example, with kids starting off with 22 kids in their class, as my son has, it's going to be, that's not as many districts cap kindergarten at 18. We're going to have skill deficits that we have to catch up. So if we're going to continue to follow that model, we need to grow our intervention systems. So just take this opportunity to plug that. But that said, we are very proud, again, as many districts saw either flat performance in ELA or that they lost ground, and we saw growth. And to see significant growth in math really speaks to the efforts of the team. And we look forward to continuing to move each student forward.
Mary, do we see more growth in kids going from like a 3 level to the 4 level, or like the 1 to the 2? I mean, is it, or just equally spread out, or is there a definite trend or a pattern?
Yes and no. It depends. I would say that a trend that we can say we've seen across the district is that our students, Memorial School has students leaving 3rd grade performing quite well. We have been a school of distinction now for a number of years with their scores that I'm looking at for the past year. It wouldn't surprise me if they're a school of distinction again. I can't know that yet, but it wouldn't surprise me. We see a little bit of a dip in 4th. We see a big jump in 5th in literacy. 5th grade math tends to be a tough year for students. 4th, they kind of hold, and then 5th, the expectations jump. The demand on math learners really shifts in 5th grade. 7th grade is another big year of math growth. So we can anticipate that really from the standards, the content that they're asked to engage with. Any math expert will tell you, like, 5th grade's going to be, 5th grade math is hard.
So if more, say, 5th grade, so if more kids struggle in 5th grade in math, then we need the staff to help them, with extra help and, to grow.
Yes, I think we could definitely map our needs to staffing, but I would say that the trouble with that is the philosophy around intervention is that you intervene early.
Yes.
So the idea is in other words, if Memorial had a lot of support, we hopefully shore up any of those baseline skills and see less reactive need at center, in theory. And so that actually, Memorial has been sort of the least staffed in terms of intervention in math. And so I think that's something we'd kind of want to take a look at. But we can anticipate needs in 5th, so we don't want to just pull from center and put a Memorial.
Well, no.
But that kind of thinking. What's the philosophy of the approach, and then where do we have consistent needs, and how can we respond to those? Intervention staffing is a concern.
I looked at, this is the charts on page 5, the cross-years comparisons. I think, to me, the value is looking at it diagonally.
Yeah.
You're not saying, I'm going to compare this year's 5th grade to last year's 5th
Right,
grade.
so it's different.
It's a different group of students, and
Yep.
you don't know, so there's going to be variability there. So I would be interested in and I'm not asking for an answer tonight, but just, analysis, assessment of saying, okay, and I'm just going to use 2 examples. In the ELA, the current the 6th graders, and they're, again, looking at it diagonally, in 5th grade there were 71, now they dropped down to 59. 4th, the fifth graders in math, 68 dropped down to 56. So maybe it's the challenge of the fifth grade. So I'd be interested in hearing a two-part component of, we've identified some less appealing trends. What do we think the reasons are, and then how we're going to deal with it.
Yep.
All right. So that I'd be interested in hearing that as a result of this. And again, you have obviously a vast amount of data to look at and analyze. The other thing is just looking at our dirt. If we can reach out to Old Saybrook,
I am.
who had phenomenal
Someone's already
gains.
calling them, yes.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe the answer is, which would be very useful feedback that we can use and get out to the community, is these are the resources that we're giving to our schools and our students compared to the resources that we're not giving to our schools and our students. And, you know, look, the results speak for themselves.
Yeah. So there's so Old Saybrook does stand out. They had major gains, which is very interesting because they'd actually had some decreasing scores. You know, I look at the DERGs every year, so they did have a major jump. Other districts have experienced that. North Haven has had a pretty consistent upward cycle, but then they dropped one year, and so sometimes when you call them, like, we don't know what happened. We thought we didn't change a thing. So there's a little bit of that. In literacy, I would say we are on trend with districts in terms of resources. Math, you definitely see more variability in scores linked to programs. That's something actually we want to start to take a look at because our subscription to Go Math will be up in a couple of years. And so when we selected that math program in 2015, Smarter Balance was relatively new. And programming aligned to the standards and the assessment was all very new. But now we have several years to look at what's working best for school districts. Do we agree with that approach? And then is that something we'd want to explore? And I've already started to do that a little bit with math because there's sort of the haves and the have-nots in math. So for sure. And I think when you talked about some of the less appealing trends where we see pockets of performance issues, again, there are some things that are general trends, like a little bit of a slowdown in middle school. But I also think we, quite frankly, as a district, had a few years there where we were building our practices K-5 and catching up at the middle school. And we're starting to see signs that our data is catching up at the middle school, but we also have to look particularly at that 5th to 6th grade jump in skills and see how we can support that. We had a little stagnation in 4th grade, things like that. So we do, take all of that into consideration. We also look at this in relation to other data that we collect on the students to say, is this an outlier? Or do we feel that this is truly representative of student performance? And it's pretty consistent. I don't have too much concerns that it's misrepresenting student performance, but we do go through that process as well. But we can certainly do a follow-up of a kind of a case study of a group of students, and when we identify that, how do we respond?
Yeah, and I'm not looking for, an analysis on every single grade level.
Right. But if there's a trend over a course of years.
Right. I mean, if you go from, again, maybe it is the 5th grade introduction to math, 68, 56, it's kind of a decline.
Right.
What can we identify? And maybe the answer is we can't identify any specific causes.
Right.
And we're just going to continue to work.
But it's that task, sort of that, deconstruction of the situation and see what's feeding it.
Thank you.
Any other questions in regards to this content? Okay.
So good evening. I just want to take a few minutes to talk about our AP, SAT, and SAT data at the high school. And one of the things that I'm going to try to focus on is some of the trends and some of the areas of growth that we're experiencing, but also at the end, some opportunities to increase our growth even further. So when you look at the first page, what you have is a 5-year trend of our students' performance in the AP courses that we offer at East Hampton High School. This past year, we had 97 students take 156 AP exams, which is roughly 41% of our eligible students in the junior and senior class.
And you can see that in most areas our students performed quite well. 82% of our students received a 3, 4, or 5, which gives them the opportunity to earn college credit. And that's one of the things I've spoken a number of times about, including East Hampton 2030, of our students having the opportunity, and I use that word a lot, opportunity to take a higher level course. And one of our goals at the high school is to increase our offerings. This current school year is the first year that you will see AP Computer Science offerings. So we'll be talking about, those exams and those results when I come back to you in October of 2020. Our participation trends are up slightly from past years. We had a low number of 35 about 5 years ago, so currently we're at 41% of our students taking an AP course. And again, those students took a combined 156 exams last year, and 82% of them earn a 3, 4, or 5, which lines up for them to potentially earn college credit when they move on. The 3-year trend, and in looking at this data, you could really go down a rabbit hole, and we could be here until next October if we wanted to go look at all the different data points that we could. And the College Board is offering more and more and more ways for teachers to dive into the data to support their students. But you can see that over the past 3 years, we've in biology as an example, anywhere from 82 to 89% of our students have earned a 3 or higher. Some years you see either a 0 or an NA because we had students who didn't get a 3 or higher, or we didn't offer the course based on some budgetary considerations. And the goal going forward is to increase the number of offerings for our students, both at the AP level and also at the UConn ECE level. So I'll let you take a look at those 3 pages, and then if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to try and answer them for you.
2 questions.
Sure.
Well, I guess it's kind of one question.
Okay.
So looking at the 2019 results,
Mm-hmm.
there were 2 AP tests taken in chemistry
Mm-hmm.
and 2 tests in music theory.
That's correct, yes.
Does that mean, I'm assuming every student who takes AP takes the test?
So last year,
I'm gonna have to defer a little bit because I don't know all the history behind it, so.
So up there you can see that Chem is UConn, so because it's actually our UConn ECE course, we opened it up to students who, if they would like to take take the AP class, because they are going to be doing intense preparation in obviously a Chem area. The curriculum necessarily doesn't always align, but we do open that up. So that is why you saw only a limited number of students who took it for chemistry. And then your other question was on music theory, correct?
Got it.
So those, up until this year, 1920, we have only had students taking music theory kind of on an independent study basis. And so that's sort of been, they have been working closely with either, usually with Drew, but they have also had to really make time in addition to usually their own many AP courses. So for this year, that is part of why, because we've kind of had consistent interest. That's sort of why we were excited to be able to offer that and be able to have Drew teach, a number of kids. And we're hoping that those students will do better this year because of those new course with Drew and having the opportunity to have that interaction, with their peers, and the growth opportunities for that, for the music theory is pretty big for our kids, and they are very excited about it as well as Drew.
Mark, achieving a balance of UConn courses and AP courses is the goal. I think Mr. Vernon talked about adding a UConn medical terms class, because they both offer different things. The UConn course is guaranteed college credit, and AP is advanced placement in some courses and perhaps college credit. So, offering both are great. But UConn chemistry is a very different course than AP chemistry. And some of the kids will say, well, I'll take the AP exam, but the UConn course is not necessarily preparing them. UConn it's a very lab-oriented course, where the AP courses are very content-driven courses.
And part of my question was to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But the other part of my question was that we listened tonight about the wide range of needs that our district has. So I guess I'd ask the question this way. Are there some minimum thresholds that we're going to look at for students selecting a class in order to continue to maintain that class? And I'll use the music theory that we've have decided to bring onto our elective options for our students. If we go forward over the next few years and we only have 3 or 5 or 6 kids taking the music theory AP class, to me that's going to be a struggle to say, okay, let's continue to provide that, which is laudable to provide it, but if not enough kids are taking the class and we have 100 kids running cross country or 50 kids wanting to do cheerleading, or it's going to be those types of difficult decisions we need to make.
Yeah, so when we started the UConn class, the AP class, the intention probably is to run AP music theory every other year, because there's a theory elective that attracts a lot more kids, and ideally the kids who take AP music theory would already have that under their belt. So I think, with the 2 music teachers, their schedules, AP music theory is something that we'll probably offer every other year. For the kids that take the theory elective and then it's not being offered in a year, the AP is not being offered, music teachers would be willing to do an independent study type of program with them. But you're right, we're not going to start offering AP courses of 1 or 2 students. The chemistry numbers are misleading because the kids take UConn chemistry and a few of them may elect to take AP courses. Any student can take an AP exam. It's not required that you take the course. Now, we all know that, unless you're doing a lot of work at home and you just decide, I'm going to take AP calculus and see how I do, but it's not a requirement that they actually take the course. And so the students that took the AP music theory exam last year were probably well versed in the fundamentals course and got enough extra help that they could pass the course. But you're right. I don't see us offering courses with small enrollment. Like even the AP art courses are taught in conjunction with other art courses. So there's some kids in the group doing AP art while other kids are doing other courses. But I will say, what we would like to see is, I know we stand up here very proud and say that our numbers of getting 3s, 4s, 5s, 8, we went from 75% 2 years ago to 82%. I would rather stand up and say, our enrollment in the AP courses is growing so dramatically, because I'd love the students to challenge themselves with the most rigorous college prep courses. And I'd be less concerned with the percentage of kids getting 3, 4, 5 going down if I could show you that the growth level of kids electing to take the classes went dramatically higher.
Right. So would you rather have 80% of your kids scoring 3, 4, or 5, but only 20% are taking the classes, or 60% of your kids scoring 3, 4, 5, when you have 60% of your kids there?
Exactly.
That's where I stand. And also one of the state accountability measures for the high school is participation in an AP course.
Right.
So that's also an added, it's not the reason to do it, but it's a nice added bonus. And also, kind of going with that, you also have to give some of these courses the opportunities to grow.
Right.
We have 3, 4, 5 this year, maybe it's 9 next year and 12 the year after. So I think we need to give it a couple of years to see how everything plays itself out.
Don't want to make prudent choices.
Just curious or concerned a little bit. With this push for taking AP classes and taking the exam, isn't there a fee to take the exam? And does that become an equity issue for some kids not being able to do it?
So it can be. There is a fee. I believe it's $76. I'm sorry, I went up a little bit. $96 to take an exam. But with that being said, we talk about equity. Any student that is in need of financial assistance in terms of free and reduced lunch, the College Board gives out many waivers for those things. It's not clear cut, but there are waivers available. And we can also look at other ways. I would say if we want that to become one of our goals, that all students are taking one of these classes, we would also look at, from a budgetary impact, support for those students so that it is equitable for all kids.
Sorry, and also our Board of Ed has, or somehow Karen figures out how she's making that work where our students only pay half of each of their fees. So each student already has that opportunity that is something that you think we have been able to still manage to make happen. I know Karen has been creative in the last couple of years of how that happens, but once our final order happens, which will happen on November 15th, I'll give the estimate to Karen so she can plan accordingly. Sorry, I know
It's okay.
Karen has been here for that, so I just wanted
Thank
to
you.
insert that as well.
So, SAT. This past SAT 2019 mean scores, which are the current seniors, last year's juniors. The scores, 542 and 520 were East Hampton school day scores. We also get the scores from any student if they take it on a Saturday in October, November, or the spring of their junior year. So the top two lines are SAT school day, which was given in March of 2019. Our numbers are above, our mean scores, are above both the state and national averages in evidence-based reading and writing. In math, we are above the Connecticut mean score average and slightly below the national average in that regard. But again, our scores are good. And one of our other goals is to see improvement. But I talk about improvement from a growth over time perspective. So if you look at our cohort data, and there's some NAs because not every grade has taken these, but I would talk to you about, as an example, the class of 2020, the current seniors. So their 10th grade PSAT scores, 500 in evidence-based reading and writing, 470 in math. 11th grade, the following year, 540 in evidence-based reading and writing, and 500 in math. So you see a 40 and a 30-point growth, and then you see a slight growth from October of 11th grade to March of 11th grade for the SAT school day scores. So again, you're seeing some growth over time, and that's with our teachers using Khan Academy in their classrooms, with our teachers tying some of their student learning objectives or outcomes to SAT practice opportunities in their classrooms, and that's in English, some in social studies, as well as in math. You can see the class of 2021, the current juniors. So we have their 10th grade PSAT scores, we'll have their 11th grade shortly, and then we'll be talking about their growth at this point next year. And I'm excited to see that the class of 2022, the current sophomores, took the PSAT 9 in their 9th grade year, and so you see their numbers, and our hope is that through some planfulness with teachers in specific targeted areas of classrooms, that we'll continue to see growth. And we have a nice set of trend data from 9th grade, 10th, 11th to 11th grade in the spring. So we're seeing some positive growth with those grades. So if no one has any questions, just a few highlights. Again, the mean scores are higher than Connecticut and slightly above or just at about the same for US and global mean scores. And we talk about our our AP scores. The percent of students scoring a 3 or higher is consistently exceeded both state and global numbers. However, for future reference, my goal is for more students to take the exams, or more students to take the course, hopefully the exam, which may potentially lead to a decrease in scores. Again, that growth over time for class of 2020, and we expect to see growth over time for the classes of 2021, 22, and 23. So our plan of action is to continue offering the PSAT to 9th grade. Some districts, and I'm not proposing that at this point in time, but some districts do offer the same test at the 8th grade level, just so they have another year of trend data, so that 8th graders are walking in, or 9th graders are walking in with some assessment data for us to begin on the very first day of their 9th grade year. And one of the things we're doing, and teachers will get this data as well as soon as it's available, our PLC time, teachers are sharing and discussing student work and tying some of their goals and assessment practice to PSATs and then SATs. We're working towards an increase in Khan Academy. A couple weeks ago, Mary and myself went to the Performance Matters seminar in Hartford, and we met with one of the seminars, Alan Bernstein of the College Board, talking about ways to have students increase their use of Khan Academy, which they are linking to an increase in SAT scores. So we're working with our students and our teachers to make that happen. In the English and math, we have some English and math support through our SRBI process and the use of iReady scores. And again, we're consistently encouraging students to increase enrollment, and then we want to increase our offerings for both AP and CE courses.
I think what's fascinating for high schools, and we're in a good place in the state of Connecticut, because recall a couple of years ago, the state of Connecticut removed the requirement of SBAC for 11th graders, and the SAT became our accountability test. Taking the SAT makes sense to our students. They're motivated to take the SAT. And I think what's fascinating is we pay for the SAT, the state pays for the junior SAT, we pay for the PSATs. Because it gives us good data, it gives the students practice. But it's also when we talk about equity, every student takes the PSATs now and the SATs. Because what you would have seen, we would have seen results for 75% of the class. Those kids that came in on a Saturday to take the PSATs were those kids that choose to take the SATs. And now we have, because it's the accountability test, it's giving access to the SATs and the SATs to every student.
And lastly, just some information from the graduating class of 2019. There were 127 graduates, 89% are attending four-year colleges, 71% United students, 14 students or 11% attending two-year colleges, 6 will be attending vocational schools, 17 in the workplace, and 1 will be entering the military, or has entered the military, I should say. And what that shows me, and it's in line with my thinking, that every student, when they walk out the door in June of 2020, they may not go to a four-year college, but they'll walk out with a plan for what's next in their life. And that's the most important thing, whatever that plan may be.
Wow, what an information. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Overload, yeah. We were overloaded when we made all our budget requests.
Yeah, most of that was Jason, though.
I know. Yeah. All right, thank you guys. I'm sure as we go on, maybe if there was I don't know, I'm just trying to think of in 2 weeks when we have 3 new members here.
You could do it all over again.
A recap, information, maybe even have new people meet with you and get information out. Okay, thank you. We have a pile of unfinished second reads that we are going to go through. So the first one, let's get a motion. It's the motion to accept the recommended Board of Education Policy 1331, smoking in school facilities. Motion, second. Now, just again, these were all legislative updates.
Yeah, this was an update to the smoking policy that basically brought the e-cigarette information into it.
That's right, brought that up. Okay. Questions on any of it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Second one, motion to accept the recommended Board of Education Policy 3541.441, transportation
I'll
equipment.
just make you read them.
I'm gonna.
Oh, that's the ride sharing one.
Yeah, that's the Uber one.
Yeah,
I'll-
Uber.
I'll second it.
Did you make that motion?
You did.
You did, okay. All right, discussion, anything else?
I got a question.
Yep.
So this is in the 4th paragraph in the use of ride-sharing vehicles. I'm just going to read it. It is also the policy of the East Hampton Public Schools to prohibit ride-sharing services from picking up from the school after school hours those students who participate in athletics or organized extracurricular activities. So my question is, transportation to prom, how does that fall?
So, for example, if you read the last paragraphs. So prom students have always been responsible for their own transportation. We're not endorsing Uber for any events.
Right.
However, we're also not holding the board responsible. Because Uber technically should not be transporting any students under the age of 18.
Yeah.
So the important line in this is that we're not, the instructions to faculty is if an Uber driver showed up to prom or showed up to pick up a couple of students who decided to go cheer on the basketball team in Cromwell, I can't have any faculty member who, if a student says, gee, our Uber driver looks a little scary, would you come over and talk to him, make sure he's okay? We would be endorsing that ride home. So staff would be forbidden to endorse or provide or promote the
Be
ride.
involved in really any way,
Correct.
shape, or form.
So, you know, if students take Uber to the prom, you know, it's their own responsibility. But I would not have any faculty member responsible for organizing an Uber call or saying, gee, that driver looks okay, I spoke to him, you can go home with that.
And I'm totally on board with that. I guess I'm getting hung up on the language that I'm reading here, and maybe I'm taking it out of context.
So by organized extracurricular activity.
So
I'm referring to
prohibit ride-sharing services from picking up from the school after school hours.
That's from the school.
Right.
So for example.
So prom, we have the grand march, all the kids are hanging out, taking pictures and everything like that, and we have all kinds of, and I didn't see a definition of exactly, well, I guess that's sort of defines ride share.
Yeah.
Right.
But if, and I know my kids
Lyft, Uber,
rented a limo.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm looking at the language and saying prohibit ride-sharing services for picking up from the school after school hours those students who participate in athletics or organized extracurricular activities.
So the intent, let me tell you what the intent of that, and we can reword it if you're comfortable. The intent is basketball team gets home at 11 o'clock at night.
Parents don't want to come out and pick them up.
The coach cannot let them get an Uber. In that case, the coach is responsible to make sure the students do not get an Uber. By organized extracurricular activities, jazz band plays down at New Haven, they come back late, students may not get into an Uber. The coach is still responsible for making sure students get home. So that's what we mean by terms of organized extracurricular activities or athletic teams.
So how many times are we going to, I mean, it's probably not happening that much now, but we have to obviously put this out to parents more than once, you know, kind of a reminder.
And I don't think that many students are taking Uber.
I would agree with you, and maybe I'm probably making too big a deal out of this, right? But again, I'm just looking at the language and ride sharing. Again, to the top, the purpose of this policy, the term ride sharing refers to commercial operators such as Uber and Lyft that connect with passengers through online applications and platforms and transfer passengers in private vehicles. So maybe that precludes the
yes.
premier limousine rental for prom.
Because that's all set up ahead of time, and although you still don't know who your driver is until he gets there.
Right, but obviously you rarely have one student renting a limousine to take them to prom.
That sentence is specifically for an organized activity that gets back to the school late. Sports teams, marching band, jazz band, if there was a
club that
goes somewhere. So for when chaperones are responsible for getting students home or making sure that students get picked up before they just drive off in their car.
That would add something.
I was just in terms of the number of students that I can vouch for last year was definitely the first time at prom that there was a significant number of students who were waiting for them to kind of take that 5 minutes before, and I know that we were sort of standing outside making sure that as the last song was playing that everyone was going to their cars or that their rides are there, and that was the first time I'd say there were at least 12, maybe more students who were the prom piece.
Yeah.
That was
So,
the thing last year.
Right.
obviously they got home via Uber then too? Was it a totally
Yeah,
different
that's
Uber
exactly-
driver,
that
or was it
more
the same
part.
driver?
We
or-
noticed it on their way out, not necessarily on their way in.
Right.
That was when we were standing in the parking lot waiting about 5 minutes before, making sure that people were ready to go out, and that we were distributing ourselves in the parking lot to make sure that kids were going quietly to their cars or their rides.
Right,
And
so
that's when we noticed.
is anything gonna be, I don't know, said to parents this year based on this policy to say, hey, we don't endorse your kids using Uber even for the prom, or,
Yes.
we need to know if this is what you're planning?
I think that's why we're asking you to develop this policy, that there is no, we don't endorse any limo company, we do not endorse Uber or Lyft.
Right. But we're saying we can have limo companies on our property to pick kids up. Here, we're saying we don't want Uber on our property.
Uber should not be picking up anybody that's under 18.
Yes,
Right,
that's their
already,
policy,
so.
yes.
So
We're
there will be a
enforcing something
meeting,
that already exists.
there will be communication to families once the policy is adopted.
Yeah.
Right,
This is very important, pay attention, to this, and then when we meet with students, same thing, like, listen, this is a policy, you will not be allowed to do this, and we'll monitor that.
Yeah.
And make sure that there's ample communication with families and all.
Okay.
Mike?
So I'm just gonna make this one more observation and then I'll shut up.
I hadn't say a
I
word.
can hear you thinking.
She's not even looking at you.
I'm not even looking at you.
So, we talked, we just reinforced it. Uber shouldn't be picking up anybody who's under 18. Well, I know my senior in high school, I turned 18 in November.
There will be 18-year-olds.
So there will be 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, I think the policy is the right step. I'm just,
And to be perfectly honest, Kate has two samples. You can endorse Uber or you cannot endorse Uber. I think the dangerous thing is if we're just silent. Like, oh yeah, about 30 kids got picked up from the prom by Uber. I think you've got to either endorse it or not endorse it.
I was going to ask, since we're having our discussion here, input from Eric and Matt and you guys here at the high school, one of you guys, what your recommendation is on this policy.
So I'm not comfortable with a student taking Uber because we can't vet that driver. There's been too many issues, and I'm not comfortable from a safety perspective. And to your point about students being 18, just because you're 18 years old in our school doesn't mean you can sign yourself out. You can't sign your own permission slips for field trips just because you're 18. You still have to follow all the rules of the school. And if this is one of our school policies and rules, the age is, we can argue with, but this is a policy. And what I'd like to say is if we're going to say no, I think I would ask for a line that says that is regardless of the student's age. Because Uber obviously says 18, and they'll check.
Well, the policy says no.
Right, policy, but a line might just say, or something about communication to families, this is regardless of age, because again, if you're 18, wherever, Harvard, you can take Uber. That's their policy. So I'd like us to have something, either communication or an addition that says, this is regardless of whether or not a student is over the age of 18.
Eric, I think you're okay in that the policy doesn't address age. It says blanket,
Students.
school
Students.
activity.
If you're a student here, it doesn't matter how old you are.
Okay.
But that would be part of my communication. This is regardless of a student's age.
Yeah, okay.
Because a parent might bring it up,
Yeah, okay.
or a student might bring it up,
I think there's proms is a little unique thing, but I think.
Yeah.
But it's a big part of it.
So it is.
It's a big part of it. And like I was just saying to Nancy, and one of my last 2 cents.
The dining part, yes.
Then you have kids who can afford a limousine that get that accommodation. But kids that can't afford a limousine, they can't Uber. So, and if they don't have their own car. So I'm just throwing that out there, like you have to think about that.
Well, there was the days of pre-Uber too.
Well, and I
Kids-
think
kids
ultimately,
managed.
this ends up being
So-
a burden on the parents,
Yeah.
because
It's nice.
the Washington DC trip, what time do they get home?
Yeah.
I mean, what's it, 10, 11, midnight, 1 in the morning? You don't know because you've got traffic. As a parent,
Yeah, I know.
you got, it's a senior class, couple of friends live in the neighborhood. So we don't have to drag ourselves out of bed, or out of the house at 12 to go pick them up. Hey, just grab an Uber home and I'll pay for it, I frankly think you'll probably get more pushback from the parents on this, because it becomes Uber becomes a tool of convenience for parents, assuming they're comfortable enough with it. Like the jazz band
So-
It's
coming
not
home
super
at 11.
reliable here.
Excuse me?
So you also have the option just to say silent. You can't, you either endorse, you don't endorse, or just stay silent.
Or do you want the word endorse in there?
No,
We don't endorse it.
I'm-
Like, we can't stop Uber from.
I don't want to give anybody the impression.
Well,
that
either you
I'm
stop it or you
opposed to
don't
policy.
stop it. Right, I mean,
If I can go back to your point, I'm not sure,
yeah.
Is kind of one of the other.
if parents have the option to say, just take an Uber at 1 a.m. from Kingston High School to your house, I don't know, pick a neighborhood. Uber's not necessarily that reliable at that. Like, you might wait an hour and a half for an Uber.
In these
In these
families,
homes.
yes.
So then we're setting up staff and other, to be waiting.
For an hour.
It's not
with a
necessarily
kid, yeah.
best practice, depending
Right.
on where the prom is, to rely on Uber. If Uber's not, do you have cell service where it is Uber gonna be
So how about we do
20
that?
minutes or
I'm okay.
4 hours?
I think the policy is a good policy. I'm not trying to imply that I'm against the policy, 'cause I'm not. I really started out by being hung up on the language. That one paragraph that I'm struggling with, which is, as I read it, I see it applying to, it's not leaving prom, because that's not from the school.
Right.
It's getting to prom, and is that, an inconsistency we're okay with, if we believe there's an inconsistency there.
So we
And I don't have a
three
solution
options.
to
Well,
reword
because,
it to make it
because
better right
prom
now.
is it's an event, and they do meet with the kids, they do meet with the parents, there are certain guidelines the kids have to follow anyway. This is just one of them,
I mean, yeah, again,
so I don't think we have to single out prom, but, because that's, that's
So we
kind
can
of a
vote on this
special
now,
event.
we can change the wording, or we could pull it out and send it back to policy for further discussion. So, you made a motion, second. Do you want to go through the vote, or you want to
Well,
pull your motion?
I think we should.
Okay.
I'm not an expert on Robert's rules, but I think we do have to vote, unless you withdraw your
Yeah, he
motion.
could withdraw it, but. Okay, let's
I don't
vote.
think he's leaning to do that.
All those in favor of this policy? Aye.
Aye.
Was there any opposed? No? Okay, then it was unanimous. Okay. We're good?
We'll start educating people on Uber.
Yeah. Okay, next, we're not doing that. To accept the recommended Board of Education policy 5141.214, student sunscreen use.
Yes, that is the
I know.
legislative update. No, it's a new policy. The kids can bring sunscreen.
Yeah.
As long as it's non-aerosol.
Well, that's the debate there, isn't it? What's define aerosol?
I know.
Spray
Do we have a motion?
is not aerosol.
Yeah.
Spray sunscreen is not aerosol.
Aerosol, there isn't a debate. One has aerosol and the other doesn't. A spray is a pump. They are the same.
Do we have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, to approve, oh no, sorry, two more. Accept the recommended Board of Education policy 5144.4, physical exercise and discipline of students.
So moved. Second.
Second. Comments on that?
So this is the undirected playtime. You can't take undirected playtime away.
Yes.
Means.
Yes.
Nobody
It's
needs it.
it's a legislative update.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And finally, one is to approve the 2021 school calendar recommended by the superintendent. So-
I'm gonna make that motion.
Oh my, Lois makes a motion.
Approve the 2020 school calendar, so we don't have to worry about Project Ready.
Yes. Second.
Aye.
Oh, that was okay. Any other discussion? Yes, now that you're out of contra graduation, unfortunately, now they can have a set date. Love it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we need to approve the annual senior trip to Washington DC, October 5th through the 8th of 2020.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. You had a look on your face.
Me?
Yeah.
No.
If I could, just make a comment, since we're in comments. Over, I think, the last couple of years, there's been rumblings and unhappiness with, I know there's a payment schedule in terms of the group and the, what is that, kind of travel arrangements. That one of those payments, I think, due was around Christmas time, and families had a hard time with that payment due of their kid with the holidays.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was any option that could be looked into how the payment schedule is set.
We can absolutely take a look at
Okay,
that.
that's all I ask.
Knowing that now, I would agree that that's probably not the best
Okay.
option for families.
Maybe add one more payment to the schedule, so that
Whatever
it's a
they can
little smaller or
do, yeah.
something.
So now that it's approved, I'll meet with the advisors this week and we'll talk about, I'll put that on their radar, say, listen, when we start, we can find a way to float the deposit early, that might be part of the issue, we'll figure it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But that's a good point.
Amanda.
Just, I don't know what the itinerary is, which museums it is, but I know that now you have the Holocaust Museum and you have the African American History Museum.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of places where when you have kids that just walk in without any background, knowledge, information, you get.
They do
some
that, yes.
inappropriate.
Yep.
Well, this year, we had a couple of great things, the senior class did read night, and then we brought in, experts with the Holocaust survivors speak to the seniors prior to set that context. So once the itinerary is set, we can actually look at some of those things.
To the American History Museum, because that also, and that I think because it's newer and because it's a deeply entrenched problem in this country. You hear Shelton in the news.
Yes.
So we don't want to make news.
No, we don't, not for that.
No, we don't. So that, I mean, it's a concern because it's heavy and it's come unprepared. One of the reactions to that is to go off in that direction and do stupid things.
Yes.
So.
Okay. All those in favor of the DC trip?
Aye.
Okay. Future personnel, audience of citizens. Few stragglers, thank you. Yeah, there's the right hand up there. All right, again, thank you, Joanne and Lois. Good luck. We're done. Thank you all for this lengthy evening.